Chapter 693. Lu Ping did not expect that the person who would arrive a few days later would be Guoxianshan Laozu. However, when he thought about it, it made sense. Guoxianshan Laozu had been Jinling's disciple before he had advanced to the core forging stage. He was a truly independent person. Now that Jinling had established the Yingshan mountain range, Guoxianshan Laozu was naturally the most suitable candidate. However, the fact that the sect had directly sent a Dharma adept to establish a power in Central Plains showed how ambitious Jinling was. Accompanying Guoxianshan Laozu was Guoxianshan Laozu's fifth disciple, perfected Lu Xianyuan. He was also Master Immortal Lu when Lu Ping was still at the Blood Condensation Realm's minor repairs. At this time, perfected Lu Xuanyuan's level of practice had already reached the sixth stage of the core forging stage. Although he was still a long way from breaking through to the late core forging stage, this level of practice was already considered one of the best among the third-generation disciples. Other than these two, there were also 2 early core forging third-generation disciples and 5 fourth-generation blood condensation disciples. These 9 people, together with Lu Ping, were the people Jinling had sent to Central Plains to secretly establish a power. The teleporter in the rocky cave was originally a single-person teleporter. However, before perfected Xianxin left, he first modified the teleporter in the cave into a teleporter that could transport 5 people at a time. Then he teleported to the Clear Stream Cave in the North Sea and modified the teleporter there as well. This way, the capacity of the teleporter was increased to the point where it could transport 5 people at a time between Central Plains and the North Sea. At the same time, the amount of top-grade spirit stones required for teleporting was greatly reduced. However, in the process of modifying these 2 teleportation formations, Spiritual Master Xianxin had used up more than half of the formation spiritual materials he had obtained from the Yingtian dojo. It was not so easy to modify a super long-distance teleportation formation. Lu Ping explained everything about the rocky cave to Guotianshan Laozu. Before Guotianshan Laozu and the others returned to the North Sea, they had taken a large amount of low-grade training resources from the Yingtian temple and left them in the rocky cave. This was enough for Guotianshan Laozu to use in the early stages of establishing Yingshan Immortal Court. Just the medium spirit vein alone was enough to support an unranked power. Of course, with Guotianshan Laozu's status as a Dharma adept, a single medium spirit vein was indeed too shabby. However, this was the beginning of everything, and this situation already made Guotianshan Laozu very satisfied. After Guotianshan Laozu arrived, he quickly commanded the people he had brought to roam the Yingshan mountain range. While familiarizing himself with the surroundings of the mountain range, he also constantly observed the movements of the Xiao and Shura in the mountain range. After flattening the Ying-He Dao universe and Yingshan sects, the Shura and Xiao sects were like locusts passing through the land. Most of the Shura and Xiao sects were led by the blood demons and blood Shura to wreak havoc in some unknown place. There were only a few scattered Shura and Xiao sects left in the Yingshan mountain range. These were the Shura and Xiao sects who had fallen behind due to injuries or low levels of training. Ever since the Great Calamity, although the Shura and Xiao sects had brought great disasters to the cultivation world, after the Shura and Xiao sects had wreaked havoc in a certain area, they would rarely pass by that area again. Even other tribes of the Shura and Xiao sects would rarely visit that area again. This was also the reason why Jinling could be at ease in setting up another residence in the Yingshan mountain range. This place had already been ravaged by the Shura and Xiao sects, so during this great calamity, there would not be any large groups of Shura and Xiao sects passing through the Yingshan mountain range again. After a period of preparation, Guoxianshan and Laozu established the Yingshan Immortal Academy on a mountain peak near the Yinghe mountain range. This would be the base of Jinling's faction in the Yingshan mountain range. Although the Yingshan Immortal Academy was spacious, it was still too small to be the base of a faction. It could only be used as a secret base. After about 3 months, when all the preparations were completed, Guoxianshan finally began to send disciples under the banner of Yingshan Immortal Academy to clean up the scattered Azuras and Devil cultivators in the Yingshan mountain range. At the same time, they began to help the mortal villages in Yingshan Immortal Academy defend against the beast tides caused by the Azuras and Devil cultivators rampaging in Yingshan mountain range. Slowly, the mortal villages within a radius of 50 kilometers of Yingshan Immortal Academy became part of Yingshan Immortal Academy's sphere of influence. At the same time, Yingshan Immortal Academy also began to host the bloodline activation ceremony in the dozen or so nearby villages, selecting cultivators with good aptitudes to enter Yingshan Immortal Academy to cultivate. Although the Shura and Xiao sects had dealt a heavy blow to the cultivation world in the past, The Shura and Shioemo sects had never taken the initiative to attack places where mortals gathered. This could be considered a mystery in the cultivation world. Some cultivators had guessed that the reason why the Shura and Shioemo sects did not attack mortals was because mortals did not know how to absorb the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to expand their divine sense and will. Even though the Shura and Shioemo sects were bloodthirsty and devoured souls, the bloodline of mortals did not contain spiritual chi and could only nurture true essence. They could only observe their surroundings through their five senses and not through the divine sense and will of cultivators. Let's not talk about how Guxianshan and Laozu had taken advantage of the vacuum in the Yingshan mountain range after the Shura's rampage to expand the territory of the newly established Yingshan Immortal Academy. They searched for and took over the various cultivation resource sites that the Yinghe, Yingshan, and Dao space sects had opened up in the Yingshan mountain range for their own use. After Lu Ping welcomed Guotianshan and Laozu, he once again became a hands-off shopkeeper. Guotianshan and Laozu presided over the Yingshan Immortal Academy and had many things to do. Other than occasionally coming out to refine a few cauldrons of pills, Lu Ping did not care about anything else. After greeting Guotianshan and Laozu, he returned to his cave dwelling and went into seclusion. For some reason, Guotianshan and Laozu did not care about Lu Ping's actions. Even though the other core forging cultivators felt indignant when they thought about it, the Yingshan Immortal Academy was not perfect in all aspects. The pills they needed for their cultivation still fell on Lu Ping. When they thought about Lu Ping's identity as an alchemy grandmaster, they all calmed down. He was special because he had the qualifications. They had no choice but to accept it. After Lu Ping went into seclusion, the Yingshan Immortal Academy no longer had any alchemy grandmaster. Even though Lu Ping had refined a batch of pills before he went into seclusion, no one knew how long Lu Ping would stay in seclusion. Guotianshan and Laozu could only ask for help from the sect. A few days later, Junling's alchemy grandmaster, Daoist Xianfang, and 3 other alchemy grandmasters brought a batch of spiritual herbs of various ages that Junling had sent to Yingshan Immortal Academy through the teleportation array. They took over the responsibility of managing the Yingshan Immortal Academy's pill room from Lu Ping. One of the blood condensation realm alchemy grandmaster who came with Daoist Xianfang was Tianyu, the one who held Lu Ping's alchemy master token. Tianyu was now one of the best alchemy grandmasters among the 4th generation of Junling's disciples. He was favored by the seniors in the Pill Pavilion, especially the famous alchemy grandmaster Daoist Xianfang, who gave him many pointers. The 4th generation disciples in the Pill Pavilion were envious of Tianyu. They all believed that Tianyu would definitely become Daoist Xianfang's disciple after he advanced to the mid-blood condensation realm. However, after a few years, Tianyu's cultivation had already reached the 5th layer of the blood condensation realm. However, he didn't even have the intention to become Daoist Xianfang's disciple. Tianyu's alchemy skills were the best among the 4th generation disciples. Many of his peers had already been accepted by the Pill Pavilion's alchemy masters and alchemy grandmasters. However, not a single alchemy grandmaster, including Daoist Xianfang, took the initiative to accept Tianyu as a disciple. As time passed, all kinds of rumors started to spread. Some people said that Tianyu was once under the care of a powerful figure in the Pill Pavilion. Ordinary alchemy masters naturally wouldn't accept Tianyu as a disciple, and Tianyu naturally wouldn't risk angering that powerful figure by accepting someone else as his master. There were also people who said that Tianyu was arrogant and thought that no one was qualified to be his master. He didn't even put Daoist Xianfang, who had helped him a lot, in his eyes. There were also people who said that Tianyu had offended someone that even Daoist Xianfang didn't dare to offend, so no one in the Pill Pavilion dared to accept him as a disciple. There were also people who asked Daoist Xianfang why he didn't accept Tianyu as a disciple. Since Daoist Xianfang had given Tianyu many pointers and Tianyu's talent in alchemy was quite high, Daoist Xianfang only smiled and didn't answer. Tianyu had also been asked several times why he didn't accept a master. With his master's pointers, with his talent in alchemy, his progress in alchemy would undoubtedly be twice the result with half the effort. However, Tianyu only politely declined their kind intentions. Because of this, he was even reprimanded by many 3rd and even 2nd generation alchemy masters. They all said that he was too arrogant, but Tianyu never defended himself. This time, Tianyu came to Yingshan Immortal Academy with a mid-grade pill furnace. Before he came to the Central Plains, Elder Immortal Fang Tao from Huangli Island had personally given it to him. This made the other 2 blood condensation alchemy masters who came with Daoist Xianfang very envious. When Daoist Xianfang saw the pill furnace, he only smiled. Lu Taohua was already 10 years old. Although her real age was probably much older than a cultivator who had reached the true spirit realm, she stubbornly counted the years from the year she transformed. In the blink of an eye, 10 years had passed. 10 years was a very long time for Samling, Lu Qiner, Lu Dague, Guotianshan, Laozu, Daoist Lu Shenyuan, and the others who managed Yingshan Immortal Academy. However, to Lu Taohua, 10 years was nothing compared to the time before she transformed. Thus, while Lu Ping was in seclusion, Lu Qiner's cultivation also broke through to the 5th stage of the core forging realm. Samling also advanced to the mid-stage of the core forging realm. Even Lu Dabeo's cultivation rose by 1 stage, reaching the 2nd stage. The Amethyst Queen Bee's cultivation rose by 2 stages, reaching the 3rd stage. Lu Dague also advanced to the 3rd stage. Under the management of Guotianshan and Laozu, the entire Yingshan Immortal Academy gradually got on the right track and started to develop steadily. With the Yingshan Immortal Academy's true spirit peak as the center, the Yingshan mountain range within a radius of 1,000 miles became part of the Yingshan Immortal Academy's sphere of influence. 10 years later, Tianyu, who was at the 6th stage of the blood condensation realm, successfully refined a batch of pills for the late stage of the blood condensation realm. Under the special care of Daoist Lu Shenyuan, Du Jialua advanced to the blood condensation realm. In the forbidden area of the Yingshan Immortal Academy near the Ying River, a huge vortex of spiritual energy gradually formed in the sky, attracting the attention of all the disciples of the Yingshan Immortal Academy. Chapter 694. Heavenly Phenomenon. It was common for a core forging cultivator to trigger a heavenly phenomenon when he broke through. However, it was at most a violent storm that caused the sky to darken. Only when a Dharma manifestation cultivator broke through would they absorb all the spirit chi in a radius of tens of miles, forming a huge spirit chi whirlpool in the sky above the cultivator's seclusion. However, this phenomenon occurred when Lu Ping broke through to the 8th level of the core forging realm. Even though this spirit chi whirlpool did not look as vast as the heavenly phenomenon caused by a Dharma manifestation cultivator, it was truly formed. In the ocean palace of the Yingshan Immortal Academy, perfected Lu Shenyuan, who was reporting to Guotianshan Laozu about the academy, looked at the sky above the back mountain in shock. Below the back mountain of the Yingshan Immortal Academy was a cliff that had been cut by the Ying River. From the moment the Yingshan Immortal Academy was established, it had been listed as a forbidden area. Perfected Lu Shenyuan naturally knew who was in the forbidden area, but he definitely did not expect that Lu Ping would trigger such a shocking heavenly phenomenon. Perfected Lu Shenyuan looked at Guotianshan Laozu, who was sitting cross-legged and did not react to the heavenly phenomenon caused by Lu Ping. He thought for a while and said, "Teacher, junior brother Lu is extremely talented. The heavenly phenomenon caused by his breakthrough is almost the same as that of a Dharma manifestation cultivator. However, isn't this breakthrough a little too ostentatious? The current situation in the Yingshan mountain range is very delicate. Junior brother Lu's breakthrough might be used by people with ulterior motives to harm the Yingshan Immortal Academy." Guotianshan Laozu smiled slightly and said, "Old man might not see it. The key is how you use it. If you use it well, you might be able to completely establish our sect's position in the Yingshan mountain range." Perfected Lu Shenyuan was stunned for a moment before he fell into deep thought. After the news of the Azura and Devil cultivators joining hands to wreak havoc in the Yingshan mountain range spread, many cultivators who wanted to avoid the calamity began to plan to temporarily move their cave mansions to the Yingshan mountain range. This was also because the Azura and Devil cultivators rarely wreaked havoc in the same place twice. However, ever since the Yingshan sect was destroyed, the cultivation resources in the Yingshan mountain range that the Yingtian sect had originally managed had been divided by the various sects in the Central Plains. Only the leftovers were left. This was also why after the Yingtian sect's thousands of years, only 3 sects that could barely be considered small powers had established themselves in the Yingshan mountain range. Hence, even though the demonic cultivators and Shura's calamity had passed and this place had most likely become a pure land in the cultivation world, it was an extremely barren pure land. Hence, the cultivators who came here to avoid the calamity were merely itinerant cultivators with low cultivation. At most, there were a few small clans and small sections. However, there were exceptions to everything. Even though the Yinghe, Yingshan, and Daoyu sects that were originally stationed in the Yingshan mountain range had been destroyed by the Shura and demonic cultivators, Laozu from these 3 sects had managed to escape. After the Shura and demonic cultivators retreated from the Yingshan mountain range, the Yingshan Immortal Academy was the first to rise. Even though the Yinghe, Yingshan, and Daoyu sects had been destroyed, the spirit gathering grounds, spirit material mines, and even some remnant spirit veins that these sects had previously controlled were not completely destroyed by the Shura and demonic cultivators. As a result, the Yingshan Immortal Academy moved or occupied many of the spirit gathering grounds, ruined spirit herb gardens, spirit material gardens, and spirit material mines in the ruins of the Yinghe and Yingshan sections. However, just as the Yingshan Immortal Academy gained a foothold in the Yingshan mountain range, Yushang Laozu of the Dao Yu sect suddenly led the remaining disciples of the Yingshan and Dao Yu sects back to the Yingshan mountain range to re-establish their sect. For some reason, the Yingshan Immortal Academy's 5 blessings Laozu did not return with Yushang Laozu, while the remaining disciples of the Yingshan sect returned with Yushang Laozu. As for the other Yingshan mountain range sect, Changhe Laozu and the remaining disciples of the Yinghe sect did not appear in the Yingshan mountain range. After Yushang Laozu re-established his sect, he discovered that many of the training resources that originally belonged to him had been taken by the Yingshan side sect. Under the leadership of Yushang Laozu, the newly established Mountain Universe sect naturally did not want their resources to be taken away by others. However, when Yushang Laozu led the disciples of the sect to attack the sect, they were stopped by Guotianshan Laozu. In the end, the Mountain Universe sect's cultivators retreated pathetically. Only then did they realize that this newly established Yingshan Immortal Academy actually had a Dharma adept as their leader. Moreover, their strength was not below that of the Mountain Universe sect, which was formed by the remaining disciples of the Dao Yu and Yingshan sections. Although the Yingshan Immortal Academy had relied on the array formation at the Mountain Gate and Guotianshan Laozu's sudden appearance to catch the Mountain Universe sect off guard, the Yingshan Immortal Academy had just been established. Other than Guotianshan Laozu, the number of core forging and blood condensation cultivators they had was far behind the Mountain Universe sect. Helpless, Guotianshan Laozu sent people back to Jinling to seek help. On the other hand, he had no choice but to reduce the expansion of the Yingshan Immortal Academy. He only kept the area within a radius of 1,000 miles as the foundation of the Yingshan Immortal Academy's influence. Although Guotianshan Laozu sent a request for help back to Jinling, Jinling only sent 5 cultivators. 3 of them were core forging cultivators, 1 each at the late, mid, and early stages. The remaining 2 were 4th-generation disciples at the late blood condensation stage. The leader of the 5 was Jiang Tianlin Laozu's eldest disciple, enlightened Master Shen Tian, who had already advanced to the late core forging stage. Guotianshan Laozu found out from enlightened Master Shen Tian that although Jinling's position in the North Sea was still stable, the situation had changed. Although Jinling could still cope with the situation, it was not enough for them to send extra forces to support the Yingshan Immortal Academy in the Middle Lands. After all, although establishing a base in the Middle Lands was important, it was not an urgent matter. With Jinling's strength, it was not enough to support the rapid rise of the Yingshan Immortal Academy. In Jinling's plan, the Yingshan Immortal Academy was just to establish an inconspicuous faction to deceive people so that it would be easier for Jinling to do things in the Middle Lands in the future. Now they had to keep a low profile. Even if they had to swallow their anger, they had to continue pretending. However, the members of Jinling Laozu did not expect that Guotianshan Laozu would take advantage of the lack of influence in the Yingshan Immortal Academy to plunder a lot of cultivation resources from the 3 sects of Yingshan Immortal Academy. This allowed the academy to develop so quickly that it incurred the hatred of the Mountain Universe sect. Enlightened Master Shen Tian came to the Yingshan Immortal Academy not only to receive reinforcements from Jinling, but also to inform Guotianshan Laozu of the sect's strategy of concealing their strength and biding their time. Thus, even though the Yingshan Immortal Academy's strength had increased in the following years, they avoided conflicts with the Mountain Universe sect as much as possible and never took the initiative to provoke them. When Lu Ping came out of seclusion to visit Guotianshan Laozu, he coincidentally ran into Enlightened Master Lu Xinyuan and Enlightened Master Shen Tian discussing matters in Guotianshan Laozu's cave residence. Enlightened Master Lu Xinyuan told Lu Ping the general situation of the Yingshan Immortal Academy's development in the past 10 years. On the surface, the strength of the 4 sects on Jinling's side was not much different from that of the Shenling sect, Blue Sea sect, Haiyan sect, Feiyu sect and Linggu sect. But in fact, in Jinling's camp, because of Jinling's absolute status, this camp was united around Jinling. On the other hand, although the loose alliance formed by the other 5 sects had a common enemy, Jinling, whether it was the Shenling sect, the Blue Sea sect, or the newly joined Haiyan sect, the absolute strength of these 3 sects was not too far apart. Therefore, this alliance was like a group of dragons without a leader. It was even in the midst of internal strife for power and profit. In the battle against Jinling, they were suppressed by Jinling's side in every aspect. However, in recent years, the Crystal Palace's interference in the affairs of the North Sea through Xianling sect had increased. With the support of the Crystal Palace, Xianling sect's status in the North Sea finally began to rise again. In addition, during the trip to the Yingtian dojo, Xianling sect's Feng Shutao Laozu had inherited the Dharma soul and successfully passed the early Dharma stage 3 years ago, becoming Xianling sect's third mid-Dharma adept. With the original top expert of the North Sea, Dao Xing Laozu in charge, Xianling sect's strength finally surpassed the Blue Sea sect. Their authority in the alliance had also surpassed the Blue Sea sect and the Hai Yen sect. In the process of fighting against Jinling's camp, Xianling sect had also finally gained the leadership. In addition, Zhang Shi of the Blue Sea sect had advanced to the Dharma stage, and a second-generation disciple of the Hai Yen sect had finally crossed the threshold of the Dharma stage. Xianling sect's camp finally had the power to fight against Jinling. Fortunately, in the past 10 years, Jinling's Liang Xianfeng and Chu Xuanqing had advanced to the Dharma stage one after another. The number of Dharma adepts in Jinling had increased to a terrifying 12. In addition, a second-generation disciple from the Shui Yen Pavilion had also advanced to the Dharma stage. Therefore, although Jinling's camp could no longer suppress Xianling sect's camp with the support of the Crystal Palace like before, they could still gain the upper hand. After listening to Spiritual Master Xuantian's explanation, Lu Ping finally had a direct understanding of Jinling's situation in the North Sea. No wonder their sect was so stingy with their support for Yingshan Immortal Academy. It turned out that Jinling's current situation in the North Sea was not very optimistic. This also caused Jinling to not dare to freely expand its power in the Central Plains. Lu Ping turned to Spiritual Master Lu Xinyuan and asked about the development of Yingshan Immortal Academy. Yingshan Immortal Academy had been established for 10 years. Because of Guotianshan Laozu's achievement in defeating the Shanyu sect's Yushang Laozu, many itinerant cultivators who had entered the Yingshan mountain range to avoid the calamity wanted to join Yingshan Immortal Academy. However, although Yingshan Immortal Academy had Guotianshan Laozu, there were only 8 core forging third-generation disciples, including Lu Ping. There were 2 late-stage core forging disciples, 3 mid-stage core forging disciples, and 3 early-stage core forging disciples. Thus, those itinerant core forging cultivators who wanted to join Yingshan Immortal Academy in the Central Plains would become Immortal Academy's guest chamberlains after passing the Academy's test. However, due to the Academy's own secrecy, they were extremely cautious in choosing their guest chamberlains. After 10 years, Yingshan Immortal Academy only had 5 core forging guest chamberlains. There were 2 mid-stage core forging disciples and 3 early-stage core forging disciples. There were quite a number of blood condensation outer sect disciples, but there were no more than 20 of them. These people were mainly hired by Jinling to guide the talented youths from the mortal villages within the Academy's 1,000-mile radius. In these 10 years, although my abilities are limited, I've been diligent. I've managed to get the disciples of Immortal Academy on the right track. There's already a batch of talented disciples who have recently advanced to the blood condensation realm. Among them is the kid you recommended, Du Jialua. He has only advanced to the blood condensation realm a few days ago and is currently consolidating his cultivation. Oh. When Lu Ping heard that Du Jialua had advanced to the blood condensation realm, he couldn't help but show some interest. He asked, "Senior brother, do you know what his main bloodline is after he advanced to the blood condensation realm?" Lu Xinyuan smiled. After he advanced to the blood condensation realm, I called him over to ask about it. It turns out that he has an Earth Attribute 8 bloodline. Among the other 6 mixed bloodlines, 2 of them are Earth Attribute, 1 is Fire Attribute, and 1 is Metal Attribute. According to the natural law of the 5 elements, this bloodline is considered top-notch. If he is properly nurtured, he will definitely become a core forging cultivator in the future. When Lu Ping heard about Du Jialua's mixed bloodline, he nodded to himself. This kind of mixed bloodline was much stronger than Lu Ping's when he advanced to the blood condensation realm. However, when he heard perfected Lu Xinyuan say that Du Jialua could advance to the core forging stage in the future, Lu Ping couldn't help but laugh. From Lu Ping's point of view, this kid would be nurtured like a Dharma adept. However, the secret of Du Jialua consuming a spirit fruit to strengthen his physical body was only known by a few people. In order to protect him, Lu Ping naturally wouldn't spread this information. At this time, perfected Lu Xinyuan said, "It's a shame to say this, but it's rare for cultivators from overseas to have Earth Attribute bloodlines. Although Master and I both practice Earth attribute techniques, it's not the true techniques of our sect. We've only reached the mid-Dharma stage. Strictly speaking, the techniques that Master and I practice belong to the turtle bloodline, which is not compatible with this kid's ape bloodline. Otherwise, I might have accepted him as my disciple back then. Lu Ping looked at perfected Lu Xianyuan in surprise. Among the third-generation disciples, perfected Lu Xianyuan was considered a person with high standards. Now that he was already at the peak of the 6th level of the core forging stage, he had only accepted one true disciple. However, he seemed to have 3 to 5 registered disciples. Among the third-generation disciples who were only at the core forging stage, he was second only to Lu Ping. Lu Ping was just thinking about how to hint to perfected Lu Xianyuan when he heard perfected Lu Xianyuan say, "However, I heard that 10 years ago, Elder Uncle Tianlin brought back a large number of Ying Tian sect's ancient books from the Ying Tian sect. I don't know if the sect has finished sorting them out, but I think there might be Earth attribute ape bloodline techniques among them. It's just that I've been staying at the Ying Shan Immortal Academy all these years, so I'm not very well informed about the sect." Lu Ping hurriedly smiled and said, "Senior brother, don't worry. I've already made some arrangements for this kid. As for the cultivation technique, senior brother can ask him to find me after his cultivation has stabilized." Lu Xianyuan looked at Lu Ping with a surprised expression. After a while, he pointed at Lu Ping and said with a smile, "So junior brother has already made arrangements. This kid is actually favored by junior brother. If this matter spreads to the North Sea, I wonder how many 4th-generation disciples of the sect will complain about how unfair it is." Lu Ping smiled slightly and said, "Senior brother must be joking. I'm lazy by nature and just don't want to waste time teaching other disciples. However, this kid has some talent after all. It would be a pity to bury it like this. Give him an opportunity. If he can be nurtured, perhaps it will be a blessing for the sect in the future." After bidding farewell to perfected Lu Xianyuan and the others, Lu Ping walked out of the True Spirit Hall and came face to face with a familiar person. The person clearly saw Lu Ping and showed a surprised expression on his face. He hurriedly stopped and slightly bowed, saying, "Greetings, senior brother Shen Ping." Although Lu Ping found this person familiar, he did not immediately remember who this person was. After the person bowed and greeted him, Lu Ping patted his head and said, "You are junior brother Shen Fang? I didn't expect you to also come to the central mainland?" After exchanging greetings with this fellow disciple who had a dispute with him in the past, Lu Ping first returned to the rock cave in the back mountain with the excuse that he had just broken through and needed to consolidate his cultivation. Perfected Shen Fang looked at Lu Ping's back with a complicated expression and sighed after a long time. There was only a look of admiration left on his face. He turned around and hurriedly walked into the True Spirit Hall. In the rock cave, in the stone room where Lu Ping cultivated in seclusion, Lu Ping looked at a small bronze wine cup placed next to the stone furnace that suppressed the spiritual vein and suddenly asked, "It's been 10 years. Linglong, have you done what you said before?" Chapter 695. If the Linglong wine cauldron was used as an offensive or defensive treasure, it would at most display the power of a spirit-nourishing treasure. It was far from being comparable to her identity as a spiritual treasure. In fact, the true name of the Linglong wine cauldron should be called the Spirit-Gathering Wine Cauldron. As a spiritual treasure that had survived a lightning tribulation, the most important function of the Linglong wine cauldron was to assist in cultivation, and this function was reflected in the gathering of spiritual qi. Lu Ping spent 10 years to reach the 8th layer of core forging. The reason why he didn't spend more time to consolidate his unstable cultivation was because of the Linglong wine cauldron. When Lu Ping broke through to the 8th layer of core forging, he didn't need to spend a lot of time to stabilize his cultivation. In fact, in the cultivation world, there were many magic treasures that could gather spiritual qi. For example, the purple spirit jade pendant that Lu Ping wore on his waist was refined from the 1,000-year-cold jade that second senior sister gave him when he entered the sect. Later, as Lu Ping's cultivation continued to increase, the jade pendant was upgraded from a top-grade magic treasure to a spiritual treasure. If it weren't for the 1,000-year-cold jade's material limitations, perhaps Lu Ping would have already broken away from Chen Lian and upgraded it to a spiritual treasure. In fact, in the cultivation world, there were many magic treasures that could gather spiritual qi. Not to mention others, Lu Ping wore a purple spiritual jade pendant that was refined from the Millennium Cold jade that second senior sister gave him when he entered the sect. Later, as Lu Ping's cultivation continued to increase, the jade pendant was upgraded from a top-grade magic treasure to a spiritual treasure. If it weren't for the Millennium Cold jade's material limitations, perhaps Lu Ping would have already broken away from Chen Lian and upgraded it to a spiritual treasure. However, these kinds of auxiliary magic treasures that were used to gather spiritual qi, suppress the soul, calm the nerves, and restore one's vitality had a common problem. It was too difficult to improve one's own quality, and it was basically a fantasy to pass the lightning tribulation and become a spiritual treasure. From this point, it could be said that the Linglong wine cauldron, which was an auxiliary magic treasure that focused on gathering spiritual qi, was able to survive the lightning tribulation. However, after the Linglong wine cauldron passed the thunder calamity, it gained a new ability that Lu Ping thought was extremely heaven-defying. That was the ability to gather spiritual veins. That's right, not only did the Linglong wine cauldron have a powerful spirit-gathering function, it could also gradually form a permanent spirit vein. Although the time needed to gather the spirit vein seemed to be quite long, the Linglong wine cauldron relied on the medium-sized spirit vein in the cave to greatly shorten the time needed to nurture the spirit vein. 10 years ago, when Lu Ping was in closed-door training, Linglong once boasted that she could use 10 years to rely on the medium-sized spirit vein in the cave to gather a small spirit vein. Although a small spirit vein was not in Lu Ping's eyes, the ability of Linglong to gather the spirit vein really surprised Lu Ping. Because a spirit vein was different from spiritual qi, it would not disappear and would grow endlessly. If the news of gathering a small spirit vein in 10 years were to spread, Lu Ping could imagine how many Dharma Laozu would come to besiege him. He would definitely be dead. The small wine cup turned back into a 3 feet tall girl. Linglong proudly jumped down from the stone platform and said, "Master, please look." However, with Lu Ping's divine sense, Lu Ping had already felt that the spiritual qi in the cave suddenly became thicker. Although a small spirit vein emitted only 1% of the concentration of spiritual qi compared to a medium-sized spirit vein, but the increased concentration of spiritual qi was still keenly captured by Lu Ping. Can it really gather a spirit vein? Although Lu Ping had already believed that Linglong would not lie, when he really saw a small spirit vein in the cave, he could not help but exclaim in amazement. How can it be fake? Linglong had an arrogant look on her face. Lu Ping's divine sense carefully examined the small spirit vein attached to the medium-sized spirit vein. Then he thought of something and turned to ask, "By the way, since you can rely on a medium-sized spirit vein to transform a small spirit vein, can you rely on a large spirit vein to transform a small spirit vein?" When Linglong heard Lu Ping's words, her face suddenly changed and then she said indignantly, "Master, in your dreams. If according to Master's words, if Linglong is placed on a large spirit vein, won't it directly nurture a medium-sized spirit vein?" Lu Ping also knew that his idea was too shocking. If according to what he thought, with Linglong's wine cauldron in hand, the large spirit vein that Jinling spent tens of thousands of years to nurture would be a joke in Lu Ping's eyes. Then he laughed, "Master is too greedy, but Linglong can nurture a small spirit vein, this is already shocking enough." But although Linglong can't transform a small spirit vein, if you let Linglong rely on a large spirit vein, it can shorten the time to gather a small spirit vein by 2 years. If you rely on a large spirit vein, then every 5 years, Linglong can gather a small spirit vein. When Lu Ping heard this, his eyes lit up again. Even if it could only gather a small spirit vein, but after a long time, this magical power of Linglong's was enough to defy the heavens. As if sensing Lu Ping's thoughts, Linglong pouted and said, "Master, don't think that Linglong can rely on a spirit vein for too long. Each spirit vein can only gather 3 small spirit veins at most. After that, this spirit vein can no longer be used by Linglong." After hearing this, Lu Ping couldn't help but feel a little disappointed, but he also knew that if Linglong could really gather on a spirit vein endlessly, after hundreds of thousands of years, perhaps all the spirit veins in the cultivation world would be gathered under Linglong's feet. But, step by step, Linglong lured Lu Ping's greed. With a smile, she changed the topic and said, "If Linglong can survive the second lightning tribulation, then Linglong can rely on a medium spirit vein to gather 2 small spirit veins in 10 years. Lu Ping's eyes immediately lit up and said, "If I survive the third lightning tribulation, doesn't that mean I can gather 3 small spirit veins in 10 years? However, Lu Ping then seemed to think of something and said, "Every time I survive the lightning tribulation, I can only rely on a spirit vein to gather 3 small spirit veins at most? If that's the case, there won't be any significant change except for shortening the time." Linglong whispered "greedy master" again and then said, "No, it's just that the number of spirit veins Linglong can breed every time I use the supernatural power will increase, but the number of the 3 times I use the supernatural power will not change." In other words, after Ling Long survives the second lightning tribulation, I can rely on a medium spirit vein to breed a total of 6 small spirit veins, and after the third lightning tribulation, I can breed 9 small spirit veins. Lu Ping finally understood. Although Ling Long's words were enough to make Lu Ping excited, and he secretly sighed that this spiritual treasure was really worth it, but Lu Ping was still a person with a clear mind. He was not confused by Ling Long's beautiful future. What a joke, for an auxiliary spiritual treasure like Ling Long, without the power to kill or protect, it would be much more difficult to survive the lightning tribulation than other spiritual treasures. The difference between a second tribulation spiritual treasure and a third tribulation spiritual treasure was too big. Lu Ping was now just a cultivator who had just advanced to the 8th layer of core forging. Helping a spiritual treasure to survive the lightning tribulation was far from a problem that Lu Ping could consider. However, Ling Long seemed unwilling to give up this opportunity to tempt Lu Ping. She still described to Lu Ping the beautiful future that she would bring to Lu Ping after she grew up. Master, if you can help Ling Long survive the third lightning tribulation and help Ling Long successfully advance to a pure yang spiritual treasure, then Ling Long will be able to breed small spirit veins. After listening to this, the corner of Lu Ping's mouth twitched, but he was no longer willing to listen to Ling Long's endless chatter. Pure yang spiritual treasure? It was said that Ping Doran's #1 divine tool, the 7 Thunder Treasures Calabash, was a pure yang spiritual treasure, but was that something that Lu Ping could hope to achieve? Seeing that Lu Ping didn't want to listen to her anymore, Ling Long obviously didn't want to give up. She followed behind Lu Ping as if she wanted to get a promise from Lu Ping. Lu Ping was really helpless against this tale, so he stretched out his hand and summoned the 7 Thunder Treasures Calabash from the space in his heart core. Crackle. The moment the 7 Treasures Thunder Gourd appeared in Lu Ping's hand, it released a bolt of lightning as if to demonstrate its might. Ling Long, who was behind him, jumped in fright and stopped in her tracks. She stared at the purple gourd in Lu Ping's hand with fear in her eyes. In the past 10 years, in addition to Lu Ping's cultivation advancing to the 8th layer of core forging, Lu Ping also made progress in 3 other things that were closely related to his own strength. The 7 Thunder Treasures Calabash's power greatly increased, and it was the second one after Ling Long's spirit vein. Lu Ping found some records about the 7 Thunder Treasures Calabash in the ancient books of the Yingtian Dojo. Although the refining method of the 7 Thunder Treasures Calabash was not recorded, there were some descriptions of the 7 Thunder Treasures Calabash's growth process. In order for the 7 Thunder Treasures Calabash to grow, it needed to swallow a total of 49 different kinds of heaven and earth oddities, 7 of each attribute. However, before the 7 Thunder Treasures Calabash became a spiritual magic treasure, it needed a total of 21 kinds of heaven and earth oddities as a foundation. After becoming a spiritual magic treasure, it only needed 7 kinds of heaven and earth oddities. However, these 7 kinds of heaven and earth oddities were different from ordinary heaven and earth oddities. In that ancient book, Lu Ping learned that the cultivation world's heaven and earth oddities could be divided into 3 grades. Before the 7 Thunder Treasures Calabash became a spiritual magic treasure, it only needed the most common low-grade heaven and earth oddities. After the 7 Thunder Treasures Calabash became a spiritual magic treasure, it needed to swallow middle-grade heaven and earth oddities. Compared to low-grade heaven and earth oddities, middle-grade heaven and earth oddities were undoubtedly much rarer. It was no wonder that after the 7 Thunder Treasures Calabash's evolution, Lu Ping had used many kinds of heaven and earth oddities for it to swallow, but the calabash did not respond. Lu Ping also checked the grades of some heaven and earth oddities according to the classification in the ancient book. He found that among the 7 kinds of heaven and earth oddities that Lu Ping smelted with his protective aura chi, 3 of them were actually middle-grade heaven and earth oddities. Moreover, the myriad poison liquid that Lu Ping smelted at the beginning was barely at the threshold of high-grade heaven and earth oddities. Chapter 696. Although the 7 Treasures Thunder Calabash already had 3 psychic treasure restrictions, if it wanted to go further, it needed to devour 7 kinds of mid-grade heaven and earth oddities of different attributes. Fortunately, during this trip to the Yingtian Dojo, Junling had harvested a lot of heaven and earth oddities. With the consent of Jiang Tianlin and Laozu, Lu Ping used the 7 Treasures Thunder Calabash to select a few types of mid-grade heaven and earth oddities for the 7 Treasures Thunder Calabash to devour. After 10 years of refining and brewing, the 7 Treasures Thunder Calabash's power had finally been greatly enhanced. Although its quality was still far from reaching the peak of psychic treasure, the 7 treasures Thunder Calabash's true power was no less than an ordinary spirit-nurturing treasure. However, Lu Ping also knew that in order to upgrade the 7 treasures Thunder Calabash to a spirit-nurturing treasure, the 7 treasures Thunder Calabash must absorb 7 types of mid-grade heaven and earth oddities of different attributes. After becoming a spirit-nurturing treasure, the 7 treasures Thunder Calabash still needed to absorb 7 types of mid-grade heaven and earth oddities before it could become a Thunder Tribulation spiritual treasure. After becoming a Thunder Tribulation spiritual treasure, the 7 treasures Thunder Calabash could only absorb rarer high-grade heaven and earth oddities. What were high-grade heaven and earth oddities? For example, the myriad poison syrup that could nurture the myriad wonder dew, the growing soil that was as valuable as the growing soil, a mid-grade heaven-rank spirit treasure, and so on. These were all high-grade mystical items. And after the 7 treasures Thunder Calabash had passed the 3rd lightning tribulation and before the Calabash became a pure yang spirit treasure, Lu Ping would have to search for 14 types of high-grade mystical items like the myriad poison syrup and growing soil, all of which belonged to the 7 elements. After reading these contents, Lu Ping finally understood why the 7 treasures Thunder Calabash had not gathered all 49 heaven and earth oddities. Not to mention the rarity of these high-grade heaven and earth oddities, even after becoming a Thunder Tribulation spiritual treasure, it could only absorb 7 types of high-grade heaven and earth oddities. It was no wonder that after Peng Daoren, the 7 treasures Thunder Calabash never reached the height of the number 1 divine weapon. After using the 7 treasures Thunder Calabash to scare off Linglong's wine cauldron, Lu Ping once again immersed his spiritual will into the core space. Above the grade 9 white jade lotus, the 8th monstrous flood dragon that had just appeared on the surface of a huge golden core was playing with the other monstrous flood dragons. Under the dense purple Dan Qi of the golden core, 12 origin chin beads emitting 5-colored light were constantly revolving around the golden core. Lu Ping's spiritual force was currently focused on one of the gentian pearls. Different from the other gentian beads, this gentian bead surface was emitting a much brighter multicolored light. Every time the 9th order white jade lotus flashed a beam of light, the entire 12 gentian beads would shine brightly, resonating with the 9th order white jade lotus, as if they were breathing around the Jindan together. At the same time, the brightest elemental bead took the opportunity to transmit some mysterious information to the other 11 elemental beads through the formation diagram. This shining gentian bead was one of Lu Ping's greatest gains from his seclusion. Unlike Jiang Tianlin Laozu's 108 leaf-shaped life-bonded magic treasures, Jiang Tianlin Laozu's life-bonded magic treasure seemed to have 108 leaves, but in fact they were 108 parts of a magic treasure. Each of these 108 parts had the power of an ordinary magic treasure, but when this magic treasure was finally combined, according to Lu Ping's knowledge, its power had reached the peak of spirit-nourishing magic treasures. The reason why Jiang Tianlin Laozu generously gave up the opportunity to subdue the Linglong wine cauldron instead of using it himself was not only because the Linglong wine cauldron was an auxiliary magic treasure, but also because Jiang Tianlin Laozu was preparing his own life-bonded magic treasure to transcend the tribulation and become a lightning tribulation spiritual treasure. Compared with the life-bonded magic treasure, the Linglong wine cauldron was less important in Jiang Tianlin Laozu's opinion. In the past, Jiang Tianlin Laozu hadn't subdued the Linglong wine cauldron, so it was impossible for him to know that the Linglong wine cauldron had such a heaven-defying ability to gather spirit veins. Lu Ping's life-bonded magic treasure was divided into 13 magic treasures, not 13 parts of a magic treasure. These 13 life-bonded magic treasures could form a complete life-bonded gentian formation, but they could also be used individually. If each of these 13 life-bonded magic treasures became spirit-nourishing magic treasures, then their power would far surpass Jiang Tianlin Laozu's life-bonded magic treasure. However, Lu Ping wanted to turn 13 magic treasures into spirit-nourishing magic treasures in one go. In the eyes of other cultivators, this was a crazy and almost impossible task. However, this kind of crazy thing could only be done by someone like Lu Ping, who had a unique true essence bloodline among cultivators of the same level. At the very least, during these 10 years, Lu Ping had successfully condensed the 7th restriction on one of the 12 gentian beads, making it a spirit-nourishing magic treasure. After this gentian bead became a spirit-nourishing magic treasure, Lu Ping was delighted to find that, perhaps because of the formation, there was a connection between this spirit-nourishing magic treasure and the other 12 life-bonded magic treasures. It was precisely because of this connection that it would be much easier for Lu Ping to upgrade the other 12 magic treasures to spirit-nourishing magic treasures in the future. At the very least, Lu Ping wouldn't have to spend another 10 years to upgrade a gentian bead to a spirit-nourishing magic treasure. In fact, during Lu Ping's seclusion this time, the improvement of his strength was not limited to these aspects. Lu Ping had collected many books from the Yingtian dojo. Before Jiang Tianlin, Laozu, and the others returned to the North Sea, he had selected many books from the martial uncles that Lu Ping thought would be useful to him. He had recorded all of them for himself to study. This increased the number of spells and techniques that Lu Ping had mastered. This would definitely allow Lu Ping to have more ways to adapt when facing an enemy. While Lu Ping was meditating on the water elemental sword technique he obtained from the Yingtian dojo, a few days had passed unknowingly. Suddenly, Lu Ping's expression changed as he sat cross-legged on the stone platform. He stretched out his hand and pointed at the stone cauldron on the stone platform beside him. The stone cauldron immediately spun on the stone platform, and the door to the stone cauldron opened. After Du Jialua successfully advanced to the blood condensation realm, he used close to a month to completely consolidate his new breakthrough. Just as he came out of seclusion, the late blood condensation realm master immortal Wang Zixian, who had been in charge of leading his cultivation, appeared in front of him with a strange expression. Looking at Du Jialua's aura, Master Immortal Wang nodded in satisfaction. He said, "Not bad, your foundation is very solid. Since your cultivation has advanced to the blood condensation realm, according to the rules of the Immortal Academy, you are automatically promoted to an elite disciple. You have the right to choose a legacy cultivation technique. Go to the True Spirit Pavilion of the Immortal Academy and choose a legacy cultivation technique from Mountain Elder Lu Shenyuan." Du Jialua was stunned. He said, "Shouldn't disciple go to the Scripture Pavilion to choose a legacy cultivation technique? How can I trouble Mountain Elder?" A trace of confusion flashed across Wang Zixian's face, but he still laughed and scolded, "It's a great opportunity to have Martial Uncle Lu choose a legacy cultivation technique for you. Are you not willing?" Du Jialua chuckled and rubbed his head. He said, "Disciple is just curious. Disciple will go to the True Spirit Pavilion to pay a visit to Mountain Elder Lu." Wang Zixian was one of the 5 blood condensation disciples who followed Guotianshan, Laozu, and Lu Shenyuan to the North Sea. He was a well-known figure among the 4th-generation disciples of Jinling. Naturally, he knew that Du Jialua was called over by Lu Shenyuan because he was valued by the enlightened masters of Immortal Academy. Perhaps he could become a disciple of one of the enlightened masters and become a 4th-generation disciple. When that happened, Du Jialua would become his junior brother. Although he didn't know how Du Jialua was valued by Lu Shenyuan, he couldn't help but think of a story that circulated in the True Spirit courtyard. A legendary figure among the 3rd-generation disciples of Jinling, the Water Sword Immortal, enlightened Master Lu Xianping, whose name shook the North Sea's cultivation world. When enlightened Master Lu Xianping was still in the True Spirit courtyard, the current enlightened Master Lu Shenyuan was his leader. It was also because of enlightened Master Lu Xuanyuan's favor and help that the Water Sword Immortal became unstoppable after advancing to the blood condensation realm. Although Du Jialua's cultivation was among the best among the dozens of disciples he led, he wasn't one of the best. However, this person was valued by enlightened Master Lu Shenyuan. If he could become someone like enlightened Master Lu Xianping in the future, it would be of great benefit to Wang Zixian. In an instant, Wang Zixian made up his mind to help this disciple. Just the fact that this person was valued by Lu Shenyuan was worth his effort. Guotianshan Laozu was only the mountain elder of Yingshan Immortal Academy when it was first established. After the battle with the Mountain Universe sect's Yushang Laozu, he handed the position of mountain elder to his personal disciple, enlightened Master Lu Shenyuan. Guotianshan Laozu himself became the Grand Elder of Yingshan Immortal Academy in name. There was also a mysterious elder in Yingshan Immortal Academy. It was said that this elder was the senior brother of Mountain Elder Lu Shenyuan, but his cultivation was higher than Mountain Elder's. He was a late core forging cultivator, but no one in Yingshan Immortal Academy had ever seen this elder. However, a few years ago, Immortal Academy once again announced an Elder Shen. This was the sect's 3rd elder after Great Elder Guotianshan. It was rumored that he was Mountain Elder Lu Xuanyuan's senior brother, also at the late stage of core forging. Compared to the mysterious elder who never appeared, this Elder Shen was much more high profile. Under Mountain Elder's invitation, this elder would often appear in Yingshan Immortal Academy, explaining Tao and divine abilities to the many disciples, guests and outer sect disciples, giving them pointers on cultivation and so on. When Yingshan Immortal Academy and the other powers in Yingshan Mountain Range clashed, this elder would often take the lead. In a battle between late core forging cultivators of the same level, this elder Shantian would often be able to fight 1 against 2. He had even forced back an expert at the 8th layer of core forging. In a short period of time, this elder Xuantian's reputation in Yingshan Immortal Academy soared. Many disciples of Yingshan Immortal Academy hoped to become elder Xuantian's disciple. As a result, there were 2 theories in Yingshan mountain range. One was that the mysterious elder was actually not a real person. At that time, Yingshan Immortal Academy was just hastily established. Apart from Guotianshan Laozu, the academy did not have any other experts, so they fabricated a late core forging cultivator to intimidate the other powers in Yingshan mountain range. The other theory was that the so-called mysterious elder was actually Taoist Master Shantian himself. However, now that Taoist Master Shantian had come out of seclusion, Yingshan Immortal Academy took the opportunity to create the impression that there were 2 late core forging elders. Their goal was the same as the first theory, to intimidate the other powers. However, among the disciples of Yingshan Immortal Academy, only Du Jialua knew that there really was a late core forging elder in Yingshan Immortal Academy. Even Wang Zixian and the other 4th-generation disciples of Jinling didn't know about this. When they arrived at the rocky cave from the northern sea through the transportation formation, Lu Ping didn't meet with them. Lu Xinyuan and the other 3rd-generation disciples clearly didn't plan on exposing Lu Ping's trump card. Not only that, Du Jialua also knew that Yingshan Immortal Academy originally belonged to a sect called Jinling. Yingshan Immortal Academy should actually be called Yingshan Courtyard. Chapter 697. This was Du Jialua's 2nd time meeting perfected Lu Xinyuan. The first time he met perfected Lu Xinyuan was 10 years ago, when perfected Lu Xinyuan followed Patriarch Guotianshan and the others to the rocky cave abode through the teleportation array. At that time, Lu Ping and Guotianshan, Laozu, and the rest decided to establish Yingshan Immortal Academy. They introduced Du Jialua to enlighten Lu Xinyuan as the first official disciple of Yingshan Immortal Academy. It was also then that Du Jialua met enlightened Lu Xinyuan for the first time. At that time, Lu Ping didn't introduce Du Jialua too much to enlighten Lu Xinyuan. He only said that Du Jialua was a mortal disciple that he unintentionally saved from the hands of the Yinghe sect cultivators. Enlightened Lu Xinyuan didn't know that Du Jialua had been consuming spirit fruits since he was young. In fact, during these 10 years Du Jialua did not receive any special treatment in Yingshan Immortal Academy. Otherwise, he would not have only advanced to the blood condensation realm after 10 years. Among the younger disciples who entered the academy at the same time as him, the more talented ones had already advanced to the blood condensation realm after 7 or 8 years of cultivation. One had to know that after Yingshan Immortal Academy was established, it spared no effort in nurturing its disciples because it urgently needed to establish a foothold in the Yingshan mountain range. In addition, Jinling's development over the past few years, the treatment of its disciples had long surpassed that of Lu Ping's time in Jinling Side Courtyard. Yingshan Immortal Academy was completely comparable to Jinling Side Courtyard, and its treatment was even better. Not to mention, great ancestor Guotianshan and the others had also plundered a lot of cultivation resources from Yinghe sect and Yingshan sect's ruins. They also moved some of the spirit gathering places, spirit veins and spirit mines to Yingshan Immortal Courtyard and sent their disciples to manage the place. In a short period of time, Yingshan Immortal Courtyard had an abundance of cultivation resources. Hence, many talented disciples took far less time to break through to the blood condensation realm than Lu Ping and the others did in Jinling Side Hall. After Du Jialua met enlightened Lu Xinyuan, enlightened Lu didn't say much. He only instructed Du Jialua to go to the back mountain. Du Jialua understood. Below the cliff of Yingshan Immortal Academy's back mountain was the surging Ying River. And beside the Ying River, there was a secret immortal cave. Adept Lu clearly wanted Du Jialua to go there. Just as Du Jialua left the True Spirit Hall, he saw a thin, sloppily dressed mid-stage blood condensation cultivator in his 20s hurrying towards him. As he was passing by Du Jialua, the cultivator raised his head to look at Du Jialua. Du Jialua could sense the aura emanating from the cultivator, which far surpassed his own cultivation base. Knowing that the cultivator was either an immortal master or an outer disciple, Du Jialua politely smiled at the cultivator. At the same time, he noticed the pair of spirited eyes on the cultivator's face. The young man seemed to be in a hurry as he hurried into the True Spirit Hall. Clearly he did not notice Du Jialua greeting him. Du Jialua did not mind as he walked towards the back of the mountain. In the True Spirit Hall, Tianyu bowed towards Enlightened Master Lu Xianyuan. Greetings, martial uncle. Enlightened Master Lu Xianyuan seemed to have guessed Tianyu's intention. However, he still smiled and asked, Martial nephew Tian, I heard that you can already concoct late-stage blood condensation pills. It seems like the title of our sect's first pill refinement master will fall on you. Although Tianyu was only a late-stage blood condensation fourth-generation disciple, he was one of the best pill refinement masters among Jinling's fourth-generation disciples. It was highly possible that he would become Jinling's pill refinement master or even pill refinement grandmaster in the future. Hence, Enlightened Master Lu Xianyuan took good care of disciples with such potential. Otherwise, with Tianyu's blood condensation cultivation, how could he enter the True Spirit Hall as he pleased? Tianyu smiled humbly. Then his expression turned anxious as he asked, Martial Uncle, I heard from Martial Uncle Xian Fang that our sect's Grandmaster Xian Ping has come to the Immortal Academy. Is this true? This disciple is eager to meet Grandmaster Xian Ping. Tianyu was in the pill pavilion, but he had never accepted a master. Although Great Master Xian Fang was taking care of him and his talent in pill refinement was outstanding, none of the second and third generation pill refinement masters in the pill pavilion took the initiative to accept Tianyu as a disciple. To Enlightened Master Lu Xianyuan, this matter was very strange. Enlightened Master Lu Xianyuan had heard some rumors about Tianyu. One of them was that Tianyu wanted to become the disciple of one of the sect's 3 pill refinement grandmasters, Enlightened Master Lu Xianping. He looked down on the other pill refinement masters in the pill pavilion. Hence, no one in the pill pavilion was willing to accept him as a disciple. However, from Enlightened Master Lu Xuanyuan's point of view, looking down on the other pill refinement masters in the pill pavilion was fake. Otherwise, Great Master Xian Fang wouldn't have favored him so much. However, it was very likely that this kid wanted to become Lu Xuanping's disciple. On the back mountain, Du Jialua walked through a forest and saw a little girl about 10 years old standing on a patch of grass that was half the height of a person. She had a peach blossom on her head. She was standing on the grass and directing the plants around her. They were swaying and dancing to the rhythm of her singing. Du Jialua was stunned when he saw the little girl, especially when he saw that the spirit herbs, spirit trees, and even ordinary flowers and trees were swaying to the rhythm of the little girl's singing. He was no longer the same as he had been in the past. He had learned a lot about the world of cultivation, and knew that if a human cultivator couldn't control such a large area of plant and vegetation magic at such a young age, then this little girl in front of him was most likely a demon. Du Jialua knew that Lu Ping had a few spirit pets under him, but he had clearly not seen the little girl in front of him. Du Jialua thought about it and decided not to complicate matters. Hence, he planned to go around the side and find a way to go down the cliff at the back of the mountain. However, just as Du Jialua was about to leave through a small path on the side, the flowers and plants on both sides of the path suddenly moved towards the center. In an instant, the entire path was covered tightly. There was no place for him to step on at all. This time, Du Jialua knew that the other party was clearly coming for him. As such, he did not panic. Instead, he stepped forward politely and said, Disciple Du Jialua has come to see Elder Xian Ping on the orders of Spiritual Master Lu Xianyuan. Please report on my behalf. When the little girl saw Du Jialua's serious expression, she immediately giggled. As she laughed, the surrounding flowers and plants began to sway as well. It was as if they were laughing at Du Jialua. No matter how mature Du Jialua was, he could not help but blush in such a situation. Just at this moment, another lovely laugh rang out. When Du Jialua raised his head to look, he saw a beautiful green and red bird standing on a spirit tree not far away. The laughter from before had come from the mouth of this bird. When Du Jialua saw this bird, he was happy instead of shocked. He hurriedly said, Is this Senior Lu Qiner? Junior Du Jialua has come to see Elder Xian Ping. The little bird on the tree was the blue phoenix, Lu Qiner. She was now at the peak of the 5th layer of the core forging realm. Back when Du Jialua was cultivating in the cave, he had been teased by this Senior Lu Qiner. Du Jialua did not dare to be the slightest bit negligent. He hurriedly greeted her from afar. Lu Qiner flapped her wings and glided over from the spirit tree. She circled above Du Jialua's head twice but ignored him. Instead, she said to the little girl standing on the grass, Little sister Peach Blossom, this brat is someone Big Brother wants to see. Little sister, please let him pass. 10 years ago, this brat was still cultivating with Big Brother. Later on, just a few days before little sister transformed, this brat left. So little sister, you do not know him. Lu Qiner was the little girl who had transformed from the spirit demon peach tree 10 years ago. In these 10 years, the little girl had been using the grass and trees in the back mountain of Yingshan Immortal Academy to monitor this region. In this region, without the little girl's permission, very few people could enter the back mountain and disturb Lu Ping's cultivation. Moreover, even if an expert tried to sneak in, it would be very difficult to avoid the little girl's eyes and ears. The little girl's talent was not something Samling, Lu Qiner, and the others could compare to. Even Lu Ping was rather amazed when he learned of this. She could control flowers and trees, and with her eyes and ears, even Lu Ping felt that it would be very difficult to avoid the little girl's detection within a certain range. The little girl nodded when she heard Lu Qiner's words. A cheerful tune sounded from her mouth, like the sound of a breeze brushing past the grass and trees. The path that had been covered by the grass reappeared in front of Du Jialuo's eyes. Moreover, Du Jialuo discovered that this path led in a different direction. Du Jialuo turned around to thank the little girl in front of him, and then walked towards the back mountain along the path that had just appeared. Lu Qiner's wings flapped, and her figure immediately disappeared into the clouds. At this time, Du Jialuo already believed a rumor that had been circulating in Immortal Academy. It was said that Immortal Academy's medicine-gathering disciples would often encounter a ghostly wall after accidentally entering Immortal Academy's back mountain's forbidden area. They would be trapped inside for several days, and only when they were on their last breaths were they rescued by Immortal Academy's true masters. As time passed, Immortal Academy's disciples became more and more respectful towards the back mountain's forbidden area. No one else entered the back mountain because of medicine gathering. Originally, Immortal Academy's disciples all thought that Immortal Academy's true masters were purposely punishing the disciples who entered the back mountain, but now, it seemed like it wasn't Immortal Academy's true masters who took action at all. It was most likely this little girl who had trapped them inside. Du Jialuo then thought back to the years before Immortal Academy was established. At that time, Immortal Academy's protective formation hadn't been completely established, and experts would often sneak into Immortal Academy to plot against them. However, each time they tried to sneak in, they would be discovered, and then attacked by Immortal Academy's experts. Now, it seemed like this Peach Blossom Fairy's contribution as well. At the bottom of the cliff at the back of the mountain, waves of the surging Ying River were constantly crashing against the cliffs on both sides of the river, making chi-chi sounds. In the sky above the cliff, a black shadow gradually grew bigger. When it got closer, one would find out that it was a huge blue phoenix. The green one released a clear cry, and then its giant body glided along the surface of Abundant River. A figure leapt off the green one's back, jumping into Abundant River. Du Jialuo formed a water-repelling art, diving 7 or 8 zhang into the river along the cliff. He could vaguely see an enormous rock cave. Du Jialuo hurriedly walked into the cave. When he passed through the cave and emerged from the water surface, he saw a familiar figure currently looking at him with a smile. Du Jialuo's face lit up and he bowed respectfully, saying, "Martial Uncle Debao, long time no see. You've gotten fatter and fatter." Chapter 698. What was Lu Ping's greatest gain in the Ying Tian Dojo? It wasn't the Thunder Tribulation spiritual treasure, the Linglong wine cauldron, nor was it the heaven-ranked upper-grade Thunder Tribulation water. Furthermore, it wasn't the large number of Ying Tian faction's legacy manuals, which included several complete sets of legacy manuals, as well as the 2 sets of legacy manuals that Jinling had obtained that led directly to the quintessential path. However, in reality, Lu Ping had obtained 3 sets of Ying Tian faction's legacy manuals. 2 of them were brought back by Jiang Tianlin Laozu, while the one that he had obtained was included in Lu Ping's greatest gain in the Ying Tian Dojo. That was the legacy of Ying Tian faction's Fei Tian Laozu, who had achieved the pure Yang Dharma and was only 1 step away from becoming a quintessential soul. Fei Tian Laozu's legacy was not only the pure Yang soul, but also everything that Fei Tian Laozu had seen and heard throughout his life in the cultivation world. Furthermore, it was the Ying Tian faction's agile ape moving mountain technique that Fei Tian Laozu had cultivated. Ying Tian faction's 4 great legacy techniques, other than Fei Tian Laozu's legacy which contained the agile ape moving mountain technique, there were 4 legacy manuals placed in each of the 4 directions of the Ying Tian Dojo's central grotto Heaven Hill, which also contained the agile ape moving mountain technique. Unfortunately, after Lu Ping had come out, he had obtained one of the legacy manuals, and then Jiang Tianlin Laozu had obtained another. Neither of these 2 manuals was the agile ape moving mountain technique. If Lu Ping's guess was correct, the other agile ape moving mountain technique should have fallen into the hands of the Blue Sea sect. Du Jialua followed De Bao into the rocky cave. After meeting Lu Ping, he heard Lu Ping ask, "Do you know why I have summoned you here today?" Du Jialua thought for a moment and said, "I heard from enlightened Master Lu that you are here for my cultivation technique?" Lu Ping nodded and said, "Now that you've entered the blood condensation realm, according to the sect's rules, you can officially become an inner disciple and have the right to choose the sect's heritage cultivation technique. Although the Celestial Academy follows the sect's rules, other than you, the other disciples don't know that the Celestial Academy is actually the outer hall of the sect. Only those who have reached the mid and late blood condensation realm and become a core forging cultivator's direct disciple are qualified to know the sect's location." Lu Ping paused for a moment, then continued, "The reason I told you all this is to tell you not to speak too much about Zhenling's sect and North Sea's cultivation world to anyone else. Even the outer disciples and guest cultivators of Immortal Academy are not allowed to mention half a word about it." Du Jialua's heart trembled and he said, "These disciples are spared." Lu Ping saw Du Jialua's solemn expression and knew that he had memorized his words. He asked again, "You've been cultivating for 10 years, so I'm sure you're quite knowledgeable. How much do you know about Ying Tian sect?" Du Jialua did not know why Lu Ping would ask such a question, but he still told Lu Ping everything he knew about Ying Tian sect. Lu Ping listened quietly to Du Jialua's explanation. Then he smiled and said, "Looks like you haven't been focusing solely on cultivation for the past 10 years. That's good. As a cultivator, it's important to explore the world and experience the ways of the world. Blindly cultivating will only limit a cultivator's horizons and ultimately hinder their progress in cultivation." Du Jialua nodded. Du Jialua hurriedly nodded in agreement, but he heard Lu Ping continue, "Ying Tian sect used to be a large and famous sect in the world of cultivation. Even our sect today cannot compare to it. Although Ying Tian sect has been destroyed, the sect's inheritance cannot be lost." Lu Ping looked at Du Jialua's thoughtful expression and knew that Du Jialua had already guessed the cultivation technique he was going to impart to him. Thus, he nodded in satisfaction and said, "I'm sure you've guessed it as well. The cultivation technique I'm going to impart to you is indeed the Ying Tian sect's heritage cultivation technique. Although our sect has been around for tens of thousands of years, there are very few earth elemental cultivation techniques in our sect. There are only 2 or 3 that can be cultivated up to the avatar realm, but strictly speaking, heritage cultivation techniques not only depend on the cultivator's bloodline attribute, but also their bloodline attribute. Hence, the cultivation technique that we're going to impart to you might not have enough potential." Du Jialua nodded and said, "I will leave everything to you, Uncle Master." Lu Ping grunted and said, "The technique I am going to teach you was entrusted by a senior of the Ying Tian sect to find a successor. I promise that although Ying Tian sect has been destroyed, the inheritance of Ying Tian sect will continue in Zhenling. I didn't expect that after you advanced to the blood condensation realm, the foundation bloodline you awakened would be compatible with this senior's cultivation technique. That's why I told enlightened Master Lu Shenyuan that I want to pass this cultivation technique to you. This cultivation technique was created by a great expert of the Ying Tian sect in the past. It's not something to be underestimated. I hope that you can cultivate it diligently and not let this inherited cultivation technique go to waste." Du Jialua was a quick-witted person. Who was Lu Ping? He was a famous sword deity of Zhenling and a mysterious elder of the Celestial Academy. Normally, he would not pay attention to minor repairs like Du Jialua. However, from what Lu Ping had said, it was obvious that Du Jialua had always been under Lu Ping's attention. Furthermore, Du Jialua was able to get a cultivation technique from Lu Ping. Although Du Jialua's cultivation was low and his knowledge was shallow, he knew that this was a rare opportunity for him. When Lu Ping saw that Du Jialua understood what he meant, he said, "Relax your mind. I will teach you this technique." As soon as Lu Ping finished speaking, his powerful divine sense instantly squeezed Du Jialua to the point where he found it difficult to breathe. At this time, Lu Ping's divine sense had increased significantly after he entered the core forging realm. It was even comparable to Jiang Tianlin's and Laozu's divine sense. How could Du Jialua, who had just entered the blood condensation realm, withstand the full force of his divine sense? Fortunately, after a moment of panic, Du Jialua knew that Lu Ping wouldn't and didn't need to do anything to him. So he opened his mind and released his divine sense, which was born after he entered the blood condensation realm. Immediately, he felt a mysterious thought exploding in his mind. It was as if thousands of brushes were splashing ink on a large piece of paper. In just a few moments, countless beautiful writings were imprinted in his mind. In the face of such a huge inheritance, Du Jialuo's newly born divine sense was like a fish that had fallen into the ocean. In an instant he was lost in the world of cultivation. He could not find his way back to reality. After Lu Ping taught Du Jialuo the cultivation method before the avatar realm that the Fei Tian ancestor had left for him, he noticed that Du Jialuo was still absorbing the huge amount of information and couldn't wake up at all. Lu Ping smiled and closed his eyes to meditate on the stone platform. After an unknown amount of time, Du Jialuo finally recovered from the huge inheritance. His face was filled with excitement and shock. He hurriedly bowed to Lu Ping. "Thank you, Uncle Master, for teaching me the cultivation method. You don't have to do this. The cultivation method I taught you is not complete. This is also due to the sect's rules. Only when you enter the late blood condensation realm and become a disciple of a core forging realm cultivator will you be able to receive the complete inheritance." Du Jialuo's expression darkened slightly. However, he quickly gathered his courage and said, "I wonder if I can become a disciple of Uncle Master?" This disciple was taken in by Martial Uncle in the beginning, and only then did I have the chance to activate my own bloodline, enter this sect, enter Immortal Academy to cultivate. The accomplishments this disciple has today are all thanks to Martial Uncle. I must ask Martial Uncle to take me in. This disciple will definitely diligently cultivate, won't make Martial Uncle lose face. Lu Ping snorted coldly. Achievements. You've only just entered the blood condensation realm and you're saying that you have achievements? What a joke. Although our sect's disciples have the qualifications to become true disciples under our sect's core forging realm cultivators after advancing to the late stage of the blood condensation realm, the truth is that 80% to 90% of these disciples can only become in-name disciples. Very few of them can become true disciples. You're still too far away from becoming a true disciple. Du Jialuo hurriedly said, "Uncle Master is right. I was too ambitious. I will definitely remember Uncle Master's words and cultivate diligently. When I reach the mid-blood condensation realm, I will come and pay my respects to Uncle Master." Lu Ping did not comment on Du Jialuo's words. Instead he said, "The cultivation technique you're cultivating is very important. It's one of the few inherited techniques of the Ying Tian sect. Although you have my protection, it's easier to dodge a spear in the open than an arrow in the dark. It's better not to reveal it to anyone. If anyone asks, just give them an earth attribute cultivation technique of the Ying Tian sect." Seeing that Du Jialuo still had more questions to ask, Lu Ping said, "All right, after a while, go and see enlightened Master Lu Shenyuan. Ask him to bring you to the Celestial Academy Scripture Pavilion. Pick one of the cultivation techniques there and use it as a cover." Du Jialuo was brought to the top of the cliff by Lu Qiner. From afar, he saw the skinny cultivator he saw at the entrance of the True Spirit Hall standing outside the spiritual herb garden. He seemed to have been blocked by the Peach Blossom Fairy and was walking around in a forest. The cultivator seemed to have noticed something was wrong. He shouted, "Disciple Tianyu wishes to pay his respects to Uncle Master Shenping. Please let me out, Senior." The cultivator shouted several times in a row but received no response. Instead, his expression calmed down and he sat down cross-legged to meditate. Every once in a while he would get up and shout again, requesting to see Taoist Master Shenping. Du Jialuo turned his head and looked at Lu Qiner who brought him up. Lu Qiner smiled and said, "Oh, so this kid is here too. He actually knows that Big Brother is in closed-door cultivation here. This kid was also someone that Big Brother thought highly of in the past. Let me help him inform Big Brother." But seeing that he was so reckless and fell into little Sister Peach Blossom's trap, let him learn a lesson. Du Jialuo turned his head and pretended that he didn't hear anything just now. After leaving the forest, Du Jialuo didn't see the Peach Blossom Fairy-like little girl again. However, he saw the cultivator called Tianyu who was trapped next to her. Obviously the little girl was nearby. It was just that Du Jialuo couldn't find her with his cultivation. Chapter 699. Ever since Water Sword Immortal Lu Xianping became famous, countless disciples in the North Sea, especially in Jinling, wanted to join Soundwave Manor. However, spiritual master Lu Xianping was a mysterious existence in Jinling. Even some of his close friends and elders who wanted to introduce disciples to him were unable to do so. When Tianyu found out from Master Xianfang that spiritual master Lu Xianping was in Immortal Academy and that the elder who had always been in seclusion was very likely to be spiritual master Lu Xianping, Tianyu immediately rushed to the True Spirit Hall to visit spiritual master Lu Shenyuan. He wanted to get some pointers from spiritual master Lu and then pay his respects to spiritual master Lu Xianping. Tianyu was slightly looking forward to it. He knew that he and Wang Qi were the rare fourth-generation disciples who received pointers from spiritual master Lu Xianping. Putting aside Wang Qi, Tianyu could tell Sage Xuanping's status in the Pill Pavilion from the time he entered the Pill Pavilion with the token that Sage Xianping had bestowed upon him. The proud and arrogant Pill Refinement Masters and even Pill Refinement Masters in the Pill Pavilion were shocked when they saw the token in his hand and looked at him with a strange gaze. Tianyu could tell Sage Xuanping's status in the Pill Pavilion. As expected, Tianyu gained a lot in the following years in the Pill Pavilion. Whenever he encountered bottlenecks or difficulties, there would always be senior cultivators from the Pill Pavilion who would step forward to give him pointers. Almost all of his requests would be answered. Among the senior cultivators, the Pill Refinement Grandmaster Sage Xianfang was the one who helped him the most. Especially in the 2 years before he came to Yingshan Immortal Academy, Tianyu could feel that the senior cultivators in the Pill Pavilion seemed to be more respectful towards him. However, Tianyu was not stupid. He knew that the senior cultivators in the Pill Pavilion probably treated him well because of the token in his hand. As expected, a piece of exciting news spread in the Pill Pavilion. After the sect's spiritual master Lu Xianping advanced to the late stage of core forging, his pill refinement skills also improved by leaps and bounds. He had already become the sect's third pill refinement master. No wonder. Tianyu had just stood up and was about to call out to pay his respects to spiritual master Lu Xianping again when he saw the dense forest in front of him suddenly collapse to the sides, as if some giant hand was rushing towards him. Even though Tianyu knew that this was Immortal Academy's rear mountain, that there wouldn't be much danger at this moment, his heart still couldn't help but pound crazily. Even though his expression remained calm with difficulty, his tightly clenched fists were about to release sweat. A gigantic sea turtle suddenly appeared in front of Tianyu. As the gigantic sea turtle crawled over, the trees on both sides that were hundreds of feet tall were crushed into pieces. Tianyu raised his head to look at the giant tortoise that was as large as a mountain. His heart was filled with fear and his face had already turned pale. However, Tianyu heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. He knew that Sage Xianping had a black tortoise as his spiritual pet. He had seen this black tortoise when Huangli Island was attacked by the demon clan. However, he didn't know when this black tortoise had grown to such a large size. Could it be that Sage Xianping had subdued a Dharma stage black tortoise? This thought flashed past Tianyu's mind, but he quickly dismissed it. When he first met Shenling, it was only a blood condensation realm beast. Now only a few years had passed. Could it be that this black tortoise had already grown to the Dharma realm? At this moment he suddenly heard the black tortoise say, "Peach Blossom Girl, please put away the illusory array. Master has something to tell this kid." Tianyu's heart skipped a beat. So it was an illusory array. No wonder the disciples of Immortal Academy said that they had encountered a ghostly wall when they mistakenly entered the forbidden area. Although there were many trees on the rear mountain, they were far from forming a forest. How could there be a ghostly wall? Now Tianyu finally understood that those disciples were trapped in an illusory realm. That was why he felt like he was surrounded by a forest that was hundreds of feet tall. As soon as the black tortoise's voice fell, Tianyu felt as if he had suddenly become taller and taller. The black tortoise in front of him, which was like a mountain that pressed down on him, was constantly lowering and shrinking at the same time. Tianyu was surprised. Only then did he realize that the trees around him, which seemed to be hundreds of feet tall, were actually flowers and plants that were more than 2 feet tall on the ground. Although the huge black tortoise was shrinking, it was still 30 feet long and half a foot tall. Tianyu instinctively looked around. He could vaguely make out the silhouette of a little girl flashing through the forest before disappearing. When he turned to look at the black tortoise again, he saw that the black tortoise's body had transformed and a beefy and honest-looking young cultivator appeared before Tianyu. Tianyu didn't dare to neglect him. He quickly bowed and said, "Greetings, senior. Are you Immortal Dague?" Dague nodded with a smile, took out 3 jade slips and handed them to Tianyu. Although Tianyu was puzzled, he hurriedly took them with both hands and looked at Lu Dague with a puzzled look. Lu Dague touched his head and said, "Master said that you don't have to greet him first. However, Master asked me to give you these 3 jade slips with the pill recipes. He said that if you can successfully refine these 3 pills before you advance to the core forging stage, you can become a disciple of Hearing Wave Mansion." After hearing this, Tianyu's hands trembled, and he almost threw the 3 jade slips to the ground. For so many years, although Tianyu had always been taken care of by Immortal Xianping had never accepted a disciple. Even if Tianyu thought that he and Wang Qi were the most likely candidates among Jinling to become disciples of Hearing Wave Mansion, the wait was too long. It was so long that Tianyu didn't really believe that he was qualified to become a disciple of Immortal Xianping. Now that Immortal Dagui had finally given him a promise from Immortal Xianping, Immortal Tianyu was immediately overjoyed. At this moment, Tianyu suddenly felt that all his persistence over the years, all the jealousy, ridicule, disdain, coldness, and slander he had faced in the Pill Pavilion all these years, had turned into nothing at this moment. All of this was worth it. Tianyu shouted excitedly in his heart. Dagui looked at the excited young man in front of him. When he first saw him on Huangli Island, he was still a timid minor repairs cultivator who was interested in cultivating spiritual herbs and refining pills. Now he had won the favor of Master and had the opportunity to become a disciple of Master. Even Dagui felt a little envious. However, Dagui also knew that as Lu Ping's spiritual pet, Dagui was the same as other spiritual pets. He wasn't restricted by any secret techniques like divine sense shackles. Moreover, Dagui's current cultivation achievements were inseparable from Lu Ping's meticulous planning. From this point of view, although Lu Dagui and the others were spiritual pets, they were actually no different from Lu Ping's disciples. Tianyu couldn't wait to use his divine sense to explore the contents of the jade slips. However, after seeing the specific contents of the 3 pill recipes, Tianyu's expression suddenly changed. Essence Expanding Pill, Meridian Strengthening Pill, and Pure Blood Pill. These 3 pills were one of the best half-step core forging pills in the Pill Pavilion of Jinling. For late blood condensation cultivators, these 3 pills could increase their chances of advancing to the core forging realm by 30%. They were the 3 best pills for blood condensation cultivators to strengthen their foundation and prepare for advancing to the core forging realm. Tianyu had been practicing alchemy in the Pill Pavilion for many years. Naturally, he had heard of these 3 pills. However, according to the people in the Pill Pavilion, only enlightened Master Xianping knew the pill recipes for these 3 pills. It seemed that enlightened Master Xianping had obtained these 3 pills from the East Sea Alchemist Conference as a reward for his superb alchemy skills. Tianyu didn't expect that enlightened Master Xianping would pass on such a precious pill recipe to him. At the same time, his heart sank. These 3 pills were not easy to concoct. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that they were the 3 most difficult pills to concoct in the blood condensation realm. No wonder enlightened Master Xianping said that as long as he could successfully concoct these 3 pills before advancing to the core forging realm, he would accept him as his disciple. In the rocky cave, Lu Ping, who was meditating, opened his eyes and saw the void 2 feet in front of him suddenly rippling like water. Lu Ping stared intently at the void and saw a sword suddenly appear from the rippling void. Then the void returned to its original calmness. Lu Ping took the magic sword and scanned it with his divine sense. Then the corners of his mouth curled into a faint smile. He whispered, "Changhe Laozu? That's an acquaintance. I was going out for a walk, but now it's on the way." Several hundred miles southeast of Yingshan Immortal Academy, 3 outer sect core forging realm guest chamberlains were facing off against 2 late core forging realm cultivators. Behind these guest chamberlains were several blood refining and blood condensation realm disciples lying on the ground. Clearly they were all heavily injured. "This is Yingshan Immortal Academy's territory. Aren't you afraid of being punished by our sect for wantonly injuring our disciples?" A 6th layer core forging realm guest elder, who was clearly the leader, questioned the 2 late core forging realm cultivators in a stern voice. However, the other side had 2 late core forging realm cultivators. One was at the 7th layer core forging realm, while the other was at the 8th layer core forging realm. Their strength far surpassed the 3 mid-stage core forging realm cultivators from Yingshan Immortal Academy. Thus, this guest elder's tone was a bit fierce. "Yingshan Immortal Academy? What a joke. Since when did Yingshan Mountain Range have such a sect? We only know that there were only 3 sects in Yingshan: Yinghe Dao Universe and Yingshan. Now, Dao Universe sect and Yingshan sect have merged to form the Mountain Universe sect. The sect master is Yushang Laozu, and our Long River Laozu has also returned to Yingshan Mountain Range. This place was originally within the Yinghe sect's territory. We are merely stopping you from entering our sect's territory. This Yingshan Mountain Range is still under the control of our 3 sections." The 6th layer core forging realm guest elder sneered and said, "Long River Laozu? Why don't you say Yinghe sect? Right now, every cultivator near the northern ice plains knows that Long River Laozu has already joined the Gu family. Because of this, they did nothing when Yingshan sect's 5 blessings Laozu fell into the Azura's encirclement. In the end, it led to 5 blessings Laozu's death. This also caused the remaining disciples of Yingshan sect to follow Yushang Laozu into the Dao Universe sect and re-establish the Mountain Universe sect. Since Long River Laozu has already become an elder of the Gu family, he naturally cannot be considered the sect master of the Yinghe sect. In that case, this spiritual herb garden naturally does not belong to your Gu family. Chapter 700. The guest chamberlain's words seem to have hit the sore spot of the two late-stage core forging sect disciples. After the Yingshan mountain range was ravaged by the Shura and Xioma cultivators, the three sect's Dao sites were all destroyed. They followed Long River Laozu and abandoned the Yingshan sect's 4,000 years of inheritance to join the Gu clan, becoming the Gu clan's outer sect. What they hated the most was outsiders saying that they had forgotten their roots. This time, Long River Laozu had returned to the Yingshan mountain range as a representative of the Gu clan to expand their territory. However, they discovered that all sorts of factions had sprung up in the mountain range. Among them, the Yingshan Immortal Academy was developing the fastest. It was even rumored that the academy had Fa Xiang Laozu overseeing it. This time, the two of them had come with the intention of testing the waters. They wanted to see how strong the Yingshan Immortal Academy was. They had reinforcements supporting them. Even if the Yingshan Immortal Academy really had a Dharma characteristic ancestor, they would not be afraid. However, after the two of them casually found an excuse to injure a few herb-gathering disciples from the Yingshan Immortal Academy, they did not see any high-level cultivators from the Yingshan Immortal Academy. Instead, a few outer sect chamberlains rushed over and pointed out their past. Moreover, among the three cultivators in front of them, the highest cultivation was only at the 6th stage of core forging. The other two had just advanced to the 4th stage of core forging. This made the two of them feel as if their dignity as late-stage core forging experts had been greatly insulted. The 7th stage core forging cultivator attacked first, using a Dao technique to attack the three people. This was the technique he was proud of, and it was most suited for group battles. In his opinion, he could deal with the three core forging guest chamberlains from the Yingshan Immortal Academy by himself. The leading guest chamberlain from the Yingshan Immortal Academy saw that his opponent was going to kill them the moment he attacked. His expression instantly changed, and he hurriedly joined forces with the other two guest chamberlains to defend. However, all three of them were loose cultivators. Being able to increase their cultivation to this level was already their limit. How much time and energy did they have to cultivate offensive techniques? This was the sorrow of individual cultivators. Perhaps they had spent far more time and energy than the disciples of the sects to increase their cultivation to the same level, but they did not have powerful killing and defensive skills. Compared to the disciples of the sects of the same level who had the inheritance of the system, their strength was a notch lower for no reason. This was also the reason why the three of them were willing to join the Yingshan Immortal Academy. If they wanted to improve further and obtain a more systematic inheritance, they could only join a sect. However, how could the large sects think highly of them and trust them? Hence, they could only find some sects that were weaker but had a complete inheritance and had the potential to develop. They hoped that they could obtain an important inheritance that could allow them to improve further. 3 consecutive explosions rang out, and the two guests who had just advanced to the mid-core forging stage immediately spat out mouthfuls of blood and fell to the ground far away. The 6th layer guest flew back several feet in the air before he managed to stabilize his body. However, his complexion was already pale. It was obvious that even though this attack didn't injure him, it had consumed a lot of his true essence. Humph, you dare to speak so arrogantly with just this level of strength? Since that's the case, the 3 of you can die. The 7th stage core forging cultivator from the Surplus River sect took a few steps forward and once again arrived in front of the 3 guest chamberlains. He pressed his right palm down slightly and an oppressive pressure appeared in the air. The 3 guest chamberlains felt the pressure on their chests increase greatly. In just a moment, the 3 of them would probably suffocate to death. At this moment, the 6th stage core forging guest chamberlain gritted his teeth. His body suddenly leaped up under the immense pressure. When he landed, he was already in front of the unconscious disciples from the Immortal Academy. He used a defensive treasure to protect them from the other party's divine ability. Meanwhile, his mouth and nose were bleeding from the other party's divine ability. The other 2 guest chamberlains from the Immortal Academy had already fainted. At this moment he could no longer care about his 2 companions. You still remember to work for the Yingshan Immortal Academy even when you're about to die. How many benefits has the Immortal Academy given you? It's rare to find a weirdo like you among rogue cultivators. Since you're willing to be a trustworthy person, I'll fulfill your wish. A ball of scarlet blood light suddenly appeared in the other party's palm. It whistled through the air towards the guest chamberlain's chest. At this moment, the guest chamberlain had already been completely suppressed by the other party's divine ability. It was already extremely difficult for him to dodge. Moreover, there were still a few herb-gathering disciples from the Immortal Academy behind him. These were all late-stage blood-refining disciples and those who had just entered the blood condensation realm. Amidst the loud bang, the guest chamberlain who originally thought that he was going to die opened his eyes in shock. He saw that there was an illusory forest in front of him that completely blocked the ball of blood light. Myriadwood Forest. Is Elder Shintian here? The guest chamberlain ignored his injuries and shouted in surprise. He had made the right bet this time. If he didn't die, he would definitely be able to gain the trust of the higher-ups from the Immortal Academy. If he could receive help from the Immortal Academy and make up for his cultivation method, he might be able to break through the shackles of the mid-core forging realm and advance to the late-core forging realm. As for the materialization realm, he didn't dare to think about it. When the 7th-level core forging cultivator saw that the innate divine ability he had just cultivated after advancing to the late core forging realm was so easily blocked, his expression changed. When he looked up, he saw a cultivator in his 30s riding a streak of light that landed in front of the heavily injured guest chamberlain. You're Yingshan Immortal Academy Xian Tian? I heard that you've recently become quite famous in the Yingshan mountain range. Even an 8th-level core forging cultivator is no match for you? The 7th-layer core forging cultivator glanced back at his comrade and asked with a serious expression. Master Xian Tian also looked back at the 8th-level core forging cultivator and handed a bottle of pills to the guest chamberlain who was struggling to get up from the ground. He said, if it weren't for fellow Taoist Li and the other 2 fellow Taoists risking their lives, my sect's disciples would have met with misfortune. This bottle of pills is one of the best healing pills from the Immortal Academy. Fellow Taoists should first take it to stabilize your injuries and then save the other 2 fellow Taoists. Guest Li smiled bitterly. I'm ashamed. The 3 of us are too weak. If it weren't for Elder Xuantian's timely arrival, I fear the 3 of us would have fallen as well. When the 7th-level core forging cultivator saw that Master Xian Tian treated him as if he didn't exist, he immediately became furious. Although he had some understanding of Master Xian Tian's strength, when he saw that Master Xian Tian was only at the 7th level of core forging like him, he thought to himself, no matter how strong you are, how much stronger can you be? Thus, he didn't say anything to his companions behind him and took the initiative to condense a ball of bloody light that shot towards Master Xian Tian. Taoist Master Xian Tian abruptly turned his head and 12 log thorns shot out from the ground, stabbing towards the cultivators who were caught off guard. At some unknown time, Master Xian Tian had already set up a trap on the ground, as if he had already predicted that the other party would attack. The moment the 7th-level core forging cultivator made his move, the 8th-level core forging cultivator behind him felt his heart skip a beat. He shouted, Junior Marshal Brother Wang, be careful. His figure flickered, wanting to rush forward to help. However, at this time Taoist Master Xian Tian had already launched an attack. Junior Marshal Brother Wang, who was at the 7th layer of core forging, tried his best to dodge and at the same time retracted his innate magical ability to block the log thorns shooting from different directions. Master Xian Tian had been a 6th-level core forging cultivator for nearly 100 years. After he found a suitable high-grade Earthstep Spirit item to advance to the late core forging stage, it was finally time for his accumulation to explode. Taoist Master Xian Tian was also a 7th-layer core forging cultivator. Taoist Master Xuantian's 12 life essence magic treasures, log thorns, attacked together. Taoist Master Xian Tian was only able to block 3 thorns, and then he tried his best to avoid the other 4. Immediately after, the 8th-layer core forging cultivator behind him summoned his magic treasure to help him block 3 thorns. However, the remaining 2 thorns pierced through his shoulder and left a hole in his thigh. In an instant the situation reversed. Master Xian Tian had severely injured a cultivator with a similar cultivation level as him. The 8th-level core forging cultivator behind him was shocked and angry. He shouted, Scoundrel, you dare? Following the cultivator's roar, a pair of wing-like magic treasures slashed towards Taoist Xian Tian. Junior Marshal Brother Wang fell to the ground. He flicked his fingers on his body to stop the bleeding. He raised his head to look at Taoist Master Xian Tian, who was fighting with the 8th-stage core forging cultivator. Senior Marshal Brother Jiaming, this person must die. After saying that, he said to enlightened Xian Tian, Did you think that we came here today just to provoke you? We already predicted that Yu Xiantian would definitely appear. It's a pity that although Yingshan Immortal Academy's reputation is not small, they only have a late-stage core forging cultivator to put out the fire. Today will be the day you die. Master Xiantian was shocked. This was a trap to kill him. Then he saw Junior Martial Brother Wang take out a talisman-like object and raise it into the sky. Although Master Xiantian wanted to stop him, Master Jianming suddenly exerted force and firmly entangled him. Master Xiantian reckoned that he might not lose to this 8th-level core forging cultivator in a one-on-one fight, but he wouldn't be able to defeat him in a short time. At this moment, the talisman in the sky suddenly broke apart, turning into 3 dark green threads that shot in different directions. Then 3 long whistles sounded. 3 auras that far surpassed Master Xiantian's came from 3 different directions, clearly forming an encirclement towards Master Xiantian. Master Xiantian's 12 wooden thorns turned into 2, 2 into 4, instantly filling the sky with wooden thorns that shot towards Master Jianming. Master Jianming sneered. He was about to dodge the attack from the front and block it from the other side, but he saw many wooden thorns change direction and shoot towards Junior Martial Brother Wang behind him. Master Jianming roared angrily. He had no choice but to turn around to protect Junior Martial Brother Wang, who couldn't move easily. Master Xiantian took advantage of the gap between Master Jianming's attack and turned to Guest Elderly in the distance. Take the disciples and the other 2 guests and leave this place. The other side's reinforcements will arrive soon. I'll cover your retreat. Guest Elderly knew that if they stayed, they would only be a burden to Elder Xiantian. Only if they escaped would they be able to return to Immortal Academy and call for reinforcements. You want to call for reinforcements? Junior Brother Wang said fiercely. The only person who can save you now is that Dharma adept of yours. However, do you think that we do not have the confidence to set up a trap and kill you so close to your sect? Chapter 701. 3 rays of light streaked across the sky, surrounding Taoist Xiantian in the middle. Taoist Xiantian and Jianming had already separated. Jianming retreated to Junior Martial Brother Wang, protecting him behind him. Seeing Junior Martial Brother Wang sneer behind Taoist Jianming, Taoist Xiantian turned to look at the other late-stage core forging cultivators. Taoist Xiantian frowned, then laughed. The Yinghe sect's dojo was destroyed and less than 10% of its disciples survived. It's impossible for 5 late-stage core forging cultivators to appear at once. 3 of you must be from the Gu clan. It seems that Changhe Laozu has really joined the Gu clan, but it seems that the Gu clan doesn't trust Changhe Laozu too much. Jinren Jianming's face darkened. He scoffed and said, "Don't try to sow discord. The reason we set this up today is to surround and kill you. It's also to give the Dharma adepts behind you a warning. If the sects you've established leaving mountain, then so be it. Otherwise, today's incident will repeat itself again and again until your adepts become a loner." Reverend Jianming's words caused Reverend Xuantian's expression to change. Reverend Jianming's words were very clear. With old ancestor Guo Tianshan's abilities, it was impossible for anything that happened here to escape his notice at such a close distance from the Yingshan Immortal Academy. However, they still dared to openly surround him. Clearly, it was because old ancestor Guo Tianshan was being held back by someone else. When Junior Martial Brother Wang saw Taoist Xuantian's expression change, he laughed sinisterly. "Do you understand now? But it's too late." With that, he turned to the 3 people surrounding Taoist Xiantian and said, "Brother Gu, please help us kill this person." The 3 people silently nodded. 3 magic treasures revolved around them, forming a simple array formation that shot towards Taoist Xiantian. Taoist Master Xuantian's strength could be considered top-notch among cultivators of the same level, and he could even compete with ordinary 8th-layer core forging cultivators. However, the cultivation bases of the 3 opponents were all at least 8th-layer core forging cultivators. Moreover, the auras emanating from their bodies were like billowing waves. Clearly, they were not mediocre among 8th-layer core forging cultivators. Even Taoist Master Xiantian would find it difficult to deal with such a person, but now there were 3 of them. Furthermore, there was also Taoist Jianming, who was also at the 8th stage of core forging. Taoist Master Xuantian's heart sank bit by bit. 6 of the 12 log thorns pierced into the ground and disappeared, while the remaining 6 circled around Taoist Master Xiantian to protect him. This was a dead end, but how could Xiantian Jinren be willing to give up? The leader of the 3 Gu clan cultivators sneered disdainfully and said, "It's just a struggle of a cornered beast." As soon as he finished speaking, a series of crisp sounds rang out. 6 log thorns suddenly pierced out from the ground, attacking the 3 separately. However, the 3 cultivators from the Gu family were already prepared. Although the power of Taoist Master Xuantian's 6 log thorns surprised the 3 of them, the Gu family cultivators were not weak. Not to mention it was difficult for 2 fists to fight against 4 hands. Even if Taoist Master Xuantian managed to seize the initiative, the 3 of them still managed to suppress him and counterattack at the same time. With just 1 strike, 3 of the remaining 6 log thorns around Taoist Master Xuantian were knocked away, one of his wooden shields cracked, and his protective astral energy was on the verge of collapse. Junior brother Wang was shocked that Taoist Master Xuantian was able to withstand the combined attack of the 3 Gu clan cultivators, but he saw that Taoist Master Xuantian was clearly an arrow at the end of its flight. He continued to ridicule him. "Xuantian, just give up. How can you be a match for the 3 Gu clan cultivators? If you resist stubbornly, you will die today. No one will be able to save you." "Oh, what if I join in?" A voice suddenly rang out nearby. The Gu clan cultivators, Taoist Jianming and the others were surprised, but there was no trace of panic on their faces. It was obvious that the person who spoke was nearby. When they had chosen this place as the location for the trap, they had already scouted the surrounding area. Even with Dharma Power Laozu hiding nearby, they still did not discover that someone had already snuck into the area without anyone knowing. However, it was precisely because the Gu clan cultivators, Taoist Jianming, and the others knew that Laozu was nearby that they did not show any signs of fear even though they were surprised. When Taoist Master Xuantian heard this person's voice, his face lit up with joy. However, when he saw the 5 late core forging adepts, the joy on his face disappeared without a trace. Especially the 3 Gu clan cultivators in front of him. They were clearly proficient in a combined attack technique. The power of this technique was similar to Jinling Tian Shui and Tian Fan, the 2 mid-Dharma adepts, joining forces to defeat Laozu. It was definitely not as simple as the combined strength of 3 late core forging adepts. A young man who looked to be about 20 years old, suddenly appeared in the sky above the battle. This time, not only were the 3 Gu clan cultivators, Taoist Jianming, and the others shocked, even Taoist Master Xuantian revealed a look of surprise. If one were to say that this person was able to sneak into the battle without being discovered, then although his strength was amazing, it was only his ability to hide his tracks. But now this person was clearly above the battle between the 2 sides. The unhindered divine techniques, the vibrations caused by the flying swords, and the danger caused by the magical weapons made it almost impossible for cultivators to hide their tracks. However, the truth was right in front of their eyes. Not only did this young cultivator succeed, if he did not reveal himself, it was likely that no one would be able to detect his presence. If that person did not take the initiative to speak, but instead suddenly attacked from above, then they would be caught off guard. The moment this person appeared, the 3 Gu clan cultivators retreated 10 feet together, expanding the encirclement once again. However, they still surrounded the person who just appeared, including Taoist Master Xuantian. At the same time, they discovered that the person who just appeared was only at the 8th layer of core forging. Excluding the injured junior brother Wang, they still had 4 8th layer core forging experts on their side. As such, what was there to be afraid of? Taoist Master Xuantian looked at the person above his head with a trace of astonishment. He could tell that the person who just spoke was Lu Ping. However, when this person appeared, Taoist Master Xuantian saw an unfamiliar face. This was somewhat thought-provoking. Why was junior brother Lu not willing to reveal his face in front of others? The person who just appeared was Lu Ping, who had rushed over after receiving Guo Tianshan's order from Laozu. Naturally, the expression on Taoist Master Xuantian's face did not escape his eyes. He looked meaningfully at the forest not far behind junior brother Wang and the others and said, "Senior brother, I'm not too late, am I?" Taoist Master Xuantian followed Lu Ping's gaze and did not see anything. However, he was a quick-witted person. Not seeing did not mean that he could not guess. Taoist Master Xuantian immediately remembered what Jiang Tianlin and Laozu had told him before he came to the Central Plains. At that time, when they escaped from the Yingtian Temple, they were ambushed by the Dharma adepts of the Gu family and the 3 factions of the Yingshan. Thus, it was obvious that these people had seen Lu Ping's face. At that time, the core forging adepts of the 3 factions who had participated in the encirclement of the North Sea adepts had all died under the surprise attack of the Xioma and Shura adepts. Only the Dharma adepts had survived. Furthermore, Lu Ping had deliberately hidden his face. Coupled with that meaningful gaze just now, Taoist Master Xuantian's Jr. immediately broke out in a cold sweat. The other party had a Dharma adept hidden among them. Lu Ping saw a flash of shock in Taoist Master Xuantian's eyes and knew that Taoist Master Xintian had already understood what he meant. However, he smiled and said, "Senior brother, how about you let me have the 3 adepts of the Gu family? I have just finished my training and want to test my skills. I'll have to trouble you to deal with the 2 dogs of the Gu family." Taoist Master Xintian knew that the junior brother in front of him was stronger than him and could only be described as unfathomable. Seeing that Zhou Donghuang had taken on the strongest of the 3 Gu brothers, he was grateful. However, he also knew that he was no match for the 3 Gu brothers. Thus, he did not argue and said directly, "These 3 have a combined attack technique. Junior brother, be careful." The 3 Gu brothers saw that Lu Ping had appeared and was talking cheerfully, as if he did not care about the others. The leader of the 3 looked angry and said in a low voice, "How arrogant of you! Although the 3 of us can't say that we are invincible among our peers, we have never been defeated by anyone below the Dharma adept level. Today let's see what you have up your sleeves." The 3 Gu brothers were not the only ones who were angered by Lu Ping's arrogant words. Taoist Jian Ming and junior brother Wang were also angered by the 2 dogs that Lu Ping had mentioned. "You've gone too far." Taoist Jian Ming summoned his own treasure and suddenly turned into a beam of light in the sky that shot towards Lu Ping. The beam of light fluctuated, clearly the same as junior brother Wang's blood-red light. However, Taoist Jian Ming's spell contained a layer of mist and did not have junior brother Wang's bloody aura. It was clear that Taoist Jian Ming's mastery of this spell was far greater than Lu Ping's. Taoist Master Xuantian's 12 wooden thorns suddenly shot out towards the beam of light in the sky. He shouted, "Your opponent is me." The 2 spells, with the help of their respective treasures, clashed against each other. For a moment there was no clear victor. Taoist Jian Ming turned to junior brother Wang and shouted, "Junior brother, lend me a hand. Let's end this quickly." After Taoist Master Xuantian's wooden thorns pierced his thigh and shoulder, junior brother Wang had been hiding outside of the battlefield. Now that he heard Taoist Jian Ming's shout, although he was unwilling, he did not refuse. A blood-red light appeared in his hand and shot towards Taoist Master Xintian. However, compared to before, this red light was clearly much smaller. However, just as the 2 sides clashed, a deafening sword chime, accompanied by an unparalleled aura and a sharp killing intent, suddenly burst out from Lu Ping, who was behind Xintian Enlightened Master. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Looking at the shocked faces of the Gu clan's 3 heroes, the Autumn Dew Fairy Sword that had been dormant for 4,000 years in Yingtian Dojo finally regained its divine might in Lu Ping's hands. Lu Ping let out a long laugh as he pointed at the trio and shouted, "Come and die." Chapter 702. Each of the 6 sword techniques in the North Sea Wave Listening technique was extraordinary, but Lu Ping knew that at least 3 of the 6 techniques were more suitable for the twin flying swords. Ever since Lu Ping had entered the core forging stage, he had been looking for a set of twin flying swords. However, Lu Ping's standards were so high that an ordinary pair of flying swords would not catch his eye. It was only after he had obtained the flowing sword that he began to think about obtaining the thin water sword of the Zhonghai sect. However, this set of flying swords was not to be underestimated. Even if Lu Ping had obtained it, he would not be able to use it until he reached the Dharma stage. After Jiang Tianlin Laozu found out that the flowing sword was in Lu Ping's hands, he had instructed Lu Ping not to reveal the whereabouts of this flying sword in the North Sea, especially in front of the Zhonghai sect cultivators. Fortunately, ancestor Jiang Tianlin had given Lu Ping the charming autumn water twin swords as a reward. Of course, part of this was because of Lu Ping's selfishness. Although it wasn't as good as the thin water flowing sword, a pair of spirit-nurturing grade flying swords was more than enough to make Lu Ping ecstatic. No Zhenling disciple would underestimate the power of a combined attack technique. However, to fight against the Gu clan's 3 heroes alone, besides Lu Ping's absolute confidence in his own abilities, the most important thing was that Lu Ping wanted to fight to his heart's content. The reason was simple: with a pair of spirit cultivation grade flying swords in hand, he was itching to fight. The 3 heroes of the Gu clan's 3 talents combined attack had once defeated 3 9th-level core forging adepts. Although they had never fought against a Dharma adept before, the 3 heroes of the Gu clan had always believed that even if they were not a match for an early Dharma adept, they would still be able to withstand a few blows from a Dharma adept. Lu Ping brandished his fated Autumn Dew sword. Although the three of them were shocked by the spirit-nurturing great treasure, it wasn't enough to make their expressions change. What truly caused the three of them to feel a trace of fear was the aura that erupted from Lu Ping's body in an instant, that kind of absolute spiritual pressure. This was something that the three heroes of the Gu clan could only sense from their Dharma idol, Laozu. However, the person in front of them was clearly at the 8th layer of core forging. The three heroes of the Gu clan didn't have much time to think. Lu Ping couldn't wait to show off his skills and see what level he had reached. Raging waves hitting the shore. Thousand snow heap sword art. Great river flows east. These three sets of sword techniques were executed by Lu Ping with ease. With Lu Ping's pair of flying swords, the sword techniques of each set were easily executed. Even the raging waves hitting the shore and the thousand snow heap sword art, with the faded autumn dew sword art and Lu Ping's mastery of swordsmanship, were no less powerful than the most powerful techniques. The raging waves hitting the shore was executed, and the pair of flying swords created wave after wave of waves that rushed towards the three heroes of the Gu clan. Although the three heroes of the Gu clan tried their best to execute their combined attack, they were still unable to trap Lu Ping within. When Lu Ping's sword techniques changed, and the thousand snow heap sword art was executed, the three heroes of the Gu clan were like an isolated island in the middle of the ocean. Monstrous waves surged from all directions, sweeping towards the island as if they wanted to completely bury it in the sea. At this time, it was no longer Lu Ping who was attacking the three heroes of the Gu clan. Instead, it was Lu Ping's pair of flying swords that had trapped the three heroes of the Gu clan in a constant struggle. Although Junior Martial Brother Wang was assisting Enlightened Jianming in his battle against Enlightened Shantian, his mind wasn't entirely focused on the battle between Enlightened Jianming and Enlightened Shantian. From the beginning to the end, he had been observing the battle between Lu Ping and the three heroes of the Gu clan. To his heart's content, Junior Martial Brother Wang had actually experienced such a feeling from Lu Ping's swordsmanship. The sky was filled with the waves of swords created by Lu Ping's two swords. The three heroes of the Gu clan had previously surrounded Lu Ping, but now it was Lu Ping's two swords surrounding the three heroes of the Gu clan. At this time, the three heroes of the Gu clan could no longer care about the shock in their hearts. The three of them could only stand back to back and focus all of their attention on defending against the encirclement of Lu Ping's two swords. After Lu Ping consecutively executed two sets of swordsmanship, his heart was at ease. A surge of heroic spirit immediately burst forth from his heart, and he couldn't help but roar towards the sky. The sword wave that filled the sky suddenly turned into a monstrous wave of swords under Lu Ping's roar. The entire wave of swords seemed to suddenly become orderly. Although the attacks of the thousand snow heap sword art came from all directions and were clearly all-pervasive, it also scattered the offensive power of the flying swords. However, when the entire wave of swords became orderly, the pair of flying swords lost some of their nimbleness, but gained a boundless offensive power. The great river flows east was a true great swordsmanship technique. It was as if the Milky Way was collapsing, but the three heroes of the Gu clan could not even be a reef in the middle of the river. Under the powerful torrent of swordsmanship, the three heroes were like giant rocks that were constantly being battered. They had no choice but to be pushed again and again, but in the end they were smashed into pieces. The three talents formation was finally unable to withstand the impact of Lu Ping's swordsmanship. The magical protection that the three heroes had formed together was forcefully cracked by Lu Ping from the front. It was like a dull hammer that directly hit the hearts of the three heroes. The three talents formation was first red, then white and finally dark red. When the three heroes could no longer suppress the blood in their hearts, they spat out a mist of blood in front of them. Junior Brother Wang, who was far away helping Perfected Jianming besieging Perfected Shantian, finally could no longer suppress the fear in his heart. This person could not be at the 8th level of the core forging stage. This person must be a Dharma adept who had suppressed his aura to disguise himself. Senior Brother Jianming quickly used Grandfather's talisman. This Yingshan immortal courtyard is sinister. This person must be a Dharma adept who has hidden his cultivation. We are definitely no match for him. Perfected Jianming was evenly matched with him because Perfected Shantian had suffered a blow from the three heroes of the Gu clan. He had already noticed that Junior Brother Wang was absent-minded when he was helping him. He had originally thought that it was because Junior Brother Wang had been injured earlier and was not strong enough. However, his shout made Perfected Jianming regret bringing him out this time. If Junior Brother Wang could harden his heart and fight with all his might, perhaps he could also suppress Perfected Shantian. If he could defeat Perfected Shantian before the three heroes of the Gu clan were defeated, then the two of them could turn around and help the three heroes of the Gu clan. Perfected Xiantian, who had just appeared, might be defeated by the five of them together. However, this junior brother Wang had obviously placed all his hopes on others. He did not know that he had to fight for his own status. Even if the Yinghe sect had joined the Gu clan, they still had to show their worth in order to be valued. Did he not know that their actions could not escape the attention of perfected Jian Laozu? Indeed, just as junior brother Wang finished speaking, an angry snort sounded in Lu Ping's divine will. This cold snort seemed to contain a trace of resentment as it rang in junior brother Wang's ears. Ah! Junior brother Wang jumped out of the battle with perfected Xiantian in shock. He immediately reacted to the voice of his grandfather, Jianghu Laozu. For a moment, junior brother Wang seemed to be at a loss as to what to do. Although junior brother Wang had not used his full strength, he was still at the 7th level of the core forging stage. He had more or less assisted perfected Jianming, which was why perfected Jianming had been able to maintain a stalemate with perfected Jianming. However, junior brother Wang's sudden retreat from the battle caused the pressure on perfected Jianming to multiply. In his heart, he had already cursed junior brother Wang, but on the surface he looked helpless. Just as Jianghu Laozu's sneak attack sounded in Lu Ping's divine will, Lu Ping seemed to be prepared. A portion of his divine will that he had hidden earlier suddenly exploded, forming an invisible divine will barrier around his body, blocking Jianghu Laozu's divine will. However, Jianghu Laozu was still at the peak of the early Dharma stage. Although he had been seriously injured in the battle against the Shura and the demonic Shuras, which had delayed his advancement to the mid-Dharma stage, the past 10 years of cultivation had made his peak Dharma stage seem even more experienced. When Jianghu Laozu's cold snort sounded, the Gu clan's three heroes' gloomy faces finally showed some relief. Immediately, the three of them acted as if they had a tacit understanding and were about to counterattack. From their point of view, under the attack of Jianghu Laozu's divine will, even if Lu Ping's divine will did not shatter, it would still be greatly damaged and his strength would drop. However, just as the three of them were about to rush forward and attack, they suddenly realized in shock that although Lu Ping's face was pale, there was a hint of mockery in the corner of his mouth. Without waiting for the three of them to realize that something was wrong, they saw a wave of swords that was even more ferocious than before descend from the sky. There were even 2 sword dragons hidden in the wave of swords, waiting for an opportunity to attack the three of them. With the beautiful autumn dew sword in hand, Lu Ping, who had already advanced to the 8th level of the core forging stage, had already reached a higher level in terms of the power of the great river flows east. Lu Ping had not used his full strength earlier because he wanted to quickly familiarize himself with the power of the great river flows east. This person was actually not afraid of Jianghu Laozu's divine will attack. Could it be that he was really a Dharma adept? The ferocious and sharp sword light once again tore through the defenses of the Gu clan's 3 heroes. As the 3 heroes looked on in despair, the 2 sword dragons swayed their huge mouths made up of sharp blades and bit towards the 3 of them. "Hey, how dare you, young man? Have mercy." 2 powerful voices rang out one after the other. Lu Ping's heart sank. There were actually 2 Dharma adepts. The killing intent in Lu Ping's heart plummeted, but he was determined to teach his opponents a lesson. The Gu clan's 3 heroes, who had already closed their eyes and waited for death, suddenly felt a heavy blow to their chests. Several of their ribs were broken, and their chests visibly caved in. However, Lu Ping's control of the fire was precise, and he did not injure their hearts. The Gu clan's 3 heroes were seriously injured and unconscious, but Lu Ping suddenly appeared next to Shentian Jinren. Enlightened Master Jianming was shocked and hurriedly retreated, but junior brother Wang was already far away. To enlightened Master Jianming's surprise, Lu Ping did not join forces with Shentian Jinren to attack. Instead, the 2 of them retreated. Enlightened Master Jianming seemed to have thought of something. When he turned his head, he saw a spatial door suddenly open in mid-air. Jianghu Laozu and another Dharma adept emerged from the door. Chapter 703. Lu Ping seemed to have predicted that Jianghu Laozu would appear. After dragging Shentian Jinren away from the battle, Shentian Jinren turned around to look and saw 2 early Dharma adepts walking out from a portal. Shentian Jinren sucked in a breath of cold air. 2 Dharma adepts. Even if the 2 of them had avoided the area where the 2 Laozu had appeared, how could the 2 of them escape from 2 Dharma adepts? However, Lu Ping did not seem to be worried about this. Changhe Laozu and the other Dharma adept did not chase after Lu Ping and Shen Tianjinren for some reason. They did not even look at where the two of them were. After Changhe Laozu appeared from the portal, his expression turned ugly. He looked at a place not far behind the two of them and said in a low voice, "I don't know where you came from, but why did you set up a training ground in such a remote and barren place like the Yingshan Mountains?" Shen Tianjinren's face lit up. When he turned around to look, he realized that Guotianshan Laozu had already appeared not far behind the two of them. Guotianshan Laozu laughed and said, "You must be joking, Brother Changhe. The Yingshan Mountains have no owner, so why can't I set up a training ground here? As for my background, I'm just a lone practitioner who happened to obtain this level of practice by chance. I just want to set up a pure land and pass down what I've learned. Thank you, Brother Changhe." A gust of hot air came out of Changhe Laozu's nostrils as he laughed coldly. What a joke. Who in the world of practice doesn't know that the Yingshan Mountains have long belonged to the Yingshan, Yinghe, and Daoyu sects? Don't you think it's too despicable of you to take advantage of the chaos when the Shura and Xioma sects were wreaking havoc? Patriarch Guotianshan sneered and said, "Your words are not without reason. However, when I arrived, the three dojo that you mentioned had already been razed to the ground by the Shura sect and the Xioma sect. Not a single cultivator from the three sects that you mentioned survived. After that, our sect was established, and Patriarch Yushang inherited the teachings of the Yingshan sect and the Space Dao sect, creating the Yushan sect. I admire fellow Taoist Yushang's character, so I gave up the territories that we previously occupied to the Yingshan sect and the Space Dao sect. Although our sect still occupies a large portion of the Yingshan sect's territory, I have never seen any disciples of the Yingshan sect come here to restore their sect's teachings." Just as Tianshan Laozu finished speaking, an ignorant voice rang out. What a joke. With my grandfather Changhe Laozu here, who would dare to inherit the Yinghe sect? The person who spoke was none other than junior brother Wang, who had regained his courage after seeing Changhe Laozu. Guotianshan Laozu acted as if he had not heard anyone speak. He just smiled and looked at Changhe Laozu and the other Dharma adept. The Dharma adept next to Patriarch Long River gave Patriarch Long River a meaningful look. Patriarch Long River's face was so dark that it looked like it was about to drip water. Reverend Jian Ming's expression changed. He turned around and said in a low voice, "Junior brother, don't be rude." Junior brother Wang did not realize that he was like a clown in front of Laozu. He continued to say, "Isn't that the case?" Reverend Jian Ming had already scolded this spoiled brat in his heart. However, he still maintained a helpless expression on his face. Just as he was about to say something, a clear voice in front of him said, "My friend, you seem to be making a mistake. I wonder if Changhe Laozu is an adjunct of the Gu family or the leader of the Yinghe sect." Junior brother Wang suddenly remembered that there was a Dharma adept from the Gu family beside Changhe Laozu. Only then did he realize that he had said the wrong thing. Just as he did not know how to respond to Lu Ping's sarcasm, he heard Lu Ping continue. "If Changhe Laozu is the leader of the Yinghe sect, that means that the Yinghe sect has not joined the Gu family. However, if Changhe Laozu has become an adjunct of the Gu family, and the former adjunct of the Yinghe sect has joined the Gu family, then Changhe Laozu will naturally not be a disciple of the Yinghe sect. I believe that Changhe Laozu would not be someone who would betray his master, right?" Junior brother Wang pointed at Lu Ping and was speechless. Previously, because he had two Laozu backing him up, he had been too proud and arrogant. However, Lu Ping had taken advantage of his weakness and continuously mocked him. Unfortunately, the Yinghe sect was weak and had joined the Gu family, so they could not refute him. At this moment, even Changhe Laozu's face was full of anger and humiliation. "Shut up." Junior brother Wang was so frightened by the furious Changhe Laozu that his head retracted into his shoulders and he kept his mouth shut. At this moment, the other Dharma adept raised his hand and summoned the three strong bodies of the Gu family. He placed 3 spirit pills into each of their mouths and then patted each of their chests. The 3 men who had been knocked unconscious by Lu Ping immediately regained consciousness. The broken ribs in their bodies were also straightened by this Laozu's pat. Although their injuries hadn't fully healed and their chest and abdomen were still in excruciating pain, such injuries were nothing to a late core forging realm cultivator. However, the 3 of them looked at Lu Ping with anger in their eyes, and eventually, a hint of admiration. This Laozu smiled at the 3 of them and said, "The 3 of you have always been arrogant in your clan. You relied on your combination attack technique to defeat ordinary peak core forging adepts. You think that you are invincible below the Dharma adept level, but you do not know that the world of practitioners is full of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. It is not something that you can fathom. Today, losing at the hands of Brother Qianshan's disciple may not be a bad thing for you. When the three heard their own Laozu's words, the way they looked at Lu Ping changed once again. The fear from before was gone, leaving only admiration and a burning desire to fight. It was obvious that this Laozu of the Gu family had a deep understanding of the three Gu brothers. With just a few simple words, he was able to sweep away the dispiritedness of the three Gu brothers' defeat at the hands of Lu Ping. This Laozu raised his head and looked at Lu Ping, then turned to Guotianshan Laozu and cupped his hands. He said, "I, Gu Hao, am very impressed that you are able to raise such a disciple. I have seen the disciples of a few large sects and large sections. Their late core forging adepts have the ability to fight against early Dharma adepts. Although these three disciples of my Gu family are usually arrogant, they still have some tricks up their sleeves. There are few adepts below the Dharma stage who are a match for them. Yet they were so easily defeated by your disciple. With this level of strength, I am afraid that even I would not be able to defeat him easily." Guotianshan Laozu's expression did not change. He only smiled modestly and said, "So it is a friend from the Gu family. You praise me too much. Although this disciple of mine has some tricks up his sleeves, how can he be compared to a disciple from a large sect of the same name? I would not dare to compare him to a friend from the Dharma stage. That would be too arrogant." Right at this moment, Ancestor Gu Hao turned his head slightly to look at an empty space in the distance, and he grinned. "May I know if the Tao Universe sect's fellow Taoist Yushang has arrived? Why don't you show yourself and have a chat with me?" Long River Laozu's heart jumped. He immediately used his divine consciousness to look in the direction that Gu Hao Laozu was looking at. Only then did he realize that there was indeed something strange about this place. When he turned his head to look, he saw that Guotianshan Laozu was still smiling. There was not the slightest hint of surprise on his face. It was obvious that he had already noticed Yushang's arrival. However, this was not the only thing that shocked Long River Laozu. Just as he was shocked by the fact that Guotianshan Laozu's level of cultivation was lower than his, but his strength was clearly not weaker than his, he suddenly realized that the 8th level core forging adept standing in front of Guotianshan Laozu, who had mocked his grandson earlier, also had a divine consciousness that was not weaker than his own. Long River Laozu's expression of surprise disappeared, but his heart was still in turmoil. After all, Long River Laozu was at the peak of the early Dharma stage, a practitioner who was about to face his tribulation. His level of cultivation was considered to be something to be proud of among his peers. However, he had first lost to Jiang Tianlin Laozu, and now he was no match for Guotianshan Laozu. Moreover, these two people's levels of cultivation were completely lower than his. Now, there was a demon-like core forging adept minor repairs who was actually not weaker than a Dharma adept. How could this not make Long River Laozu feel disheartened? Perhaps he had been a little too impatient in his eagerness to start his tribulation. Long River Laozu did not know that the setbacks he had suffered recently had inadvertently helped him achieve his dream of successfully advancing to the mid-Dharma stage in the future. Everyone was looking at the empty space. Yushang Laozu suddenly stepped out of thin air and looked in the direction of Long River Laozu. She snorted coldly and stood there, minding her own business, not saying a word to anyone present. Long River Laozu's face was as dark as water as he faced Yushang Laozu. There was a hint of shame in his expression. Gu Hao Laozu clapped his hands and said with a smile, "Since friend Yushang is here, that's great. This time, friend Guotianshan has already shown us the power of the sect that he has established. The Yingshan Immortal Academy indeed has the power to establish itself in the Yingshan mountain range. My Gu family is not a domineering and tyrannical clan, so we will naturally give the Yingshan Immortal Academy and the Yushan faction sufficient respect. Since that's the case, I have something to discuss with the two of you. Can we speak in private?" Guotianshan Laozu and Yushang Laozu looked at each other with tacit understanding, then nodded in Gu Hao Laozu's direction. Gu Hao Laozu's expression did not reveal anything, but Long River Laozu suddenly understood. No wonder friend Gu Hao did not join forces with me to deal with Guotianshan earlier. So Yushang was already on Guotianshan's side. Once we attacked Guotianshan, Yushang would definitely help. This was no wonder. This time, the Gu family had already decided to expand their territory in the Yingshan mountain range. This way, once the Yingshan Immortal Academy was chased out of the Yingshan mountain range, the next target would naturally be the Yushan faction. Without the lips, the teeth would be interdependent. Yushang would definitely have to join forces with Guotianshan in order to protect their respective foundations. It was a pity that the Gu family had also lost much of their strength in defending against the Shura and Xioma cultivators. Otherwise, the Yingshan mountain range would not have sent just one Dharma adept, Gu Hao, to expand their territory. The 4 Laozus disappeared. Lu Ping and Shen Tianjinren also returned to the Immortal Academy. However, at this time, news of Lu Ping's achievements had already spread throughout the Yingshan Immortal Academy. The 3 core forging adepts from the North Sea had already dealt with the most mysterious elder Shen Ping of the Immortal Academy. The news of him fighting 1 against 3 and heavily injuring opponents of the same level as him spread throughout the Immortal Academy, causing the blood of many Immortal Academy disciples to boil. As for the core forging adepts and a few late blood condensation adepts from the North Sea, expressions of surprise appeared on their faces. They all said, "So that's how it is. No wonder, no wonder." However, the other Immortal Academies and adepts asked curiously, "Could it be that you already knew about Elder Shen Ping?" These adepts smiled but did not say anything. However, their expressions all revealed yearning and admiration. Half a day later, Lu Ping once again received the talisman from Guotianshan and Laozu. After reading the contents, Lu Ping sank into deep thought for a moment. Then he put the talisman back. His body turned into a stream of water and directly entered the Ying River from the cave abode. He flowed along with the surging Ying River. The disciples of the Yingshan Immortal Academy were still immersed in the fervor brought about by Elder Shen Ping's tyrannical strength. However, they did not know that this mysterious elder had already secretly left the Immortal Academy. Chapter 704. Several days later, a piece of news spread among the various powers and itinerant cultivators in the Yingshan mountain range. After Long River Laozu joined the Gu clan and led the Gu clan's forces back to the Yingshan mountain range, the newly risen Yingshan Immortal Academy and the Mountain Universe sect, which was formed by the remnants of the Dao Universe sect and Yingshan sect, had no choice but to join forces to resist the Gu clan. There was a huge battle outside the Yingshan Immortal Academy. 2 late-stage core forging elders, Adept Shen Tian and Adept Shen Ping, had joined forces to defeat Adept Jian Ming Wang Jianji and the 3 heroes of the Gu clan. The 3 heroes of the Gu clan's combined attack was famous among the late-stage core forging cultivators in the cultivation world north of the flowing Flower River. Even though they were only at the 8th level of the core forging realm, the 3 of them had once fought and won against 3 9th level core forging cultivators. However, this time they were defeated by an elder of the Yingshan Immortal Academy, Adept Shen Ping, who was also at the 8th level of the core forging realm, with a pair of flying swords. The 3 of them were heavily injured, and in the end Long River Laozu and Gu Hao, the 2 Transcendence cultivators, had to appear. Only then did Adept Shen Ping retreat. This battle made the various powers in the Yingshan mountain range realize that the rise of the Yingshan Immortal Academy was not due to Guotianshan Laozu's power alone. Yingshan Immortal Academy had also obtained the recognition of the cultivation world of Hebei through this battle. Adept Shen Ping had also begun to enter the eyes of the various powers in Hebei. Lu Ping followed the Ying River and traveled hundreds of kilometers downstream. The Ying River twisted and turned in the Yingshan mountain range. After countless twists and turns, it finally broke through the encirclement of the Yingshan mountain range and entered the flatlands of Hebei, the second largest river in the Middle Lands, the Yulon River. As a result, Lu Ping followed the Ying River downstream for close to 1,000 kilometers. Not only did he not leave Yingshan mountain range, he even reached the central, southern region of Yingshan mountain range. This was also the place where Guotianshan, Yushang, Changhe, and Gu Hao, the 4 Laozu families, had discussed after the previous battle. The terrain here was low and flat. From afar, it looked like a huge fist had smashed into the Yingshan mountain range, causing the ground to cave in. One could even see the cracks in the ground that formed gullies. Therefore, this place was also called Godly Fist Basin. After entering the basin, the originally turbulent, abundant river immediately calmed down. The surface of the water surged, and a huge black tortoise carrying a young cultivator who appeared to be in his 20s floated on the surface of the water, swimming down the river. When Lu Ping received the decree from Guotianshan Laozu, he was rather surprised. He had inherited the pure yang soul of the Ying Tian sect's peak Dharma adept, Fei Tian Laozu. He knew the secret places that the Ying Tian sect had opened up in the Yingshan mountain range like the back of his hand. However, he also knew that these secret places had probably been passed down for a long time. Originally, Lu Ping had planned to search for these secret places according to Fei Tian Laozu's memories after he came out of seclusion, Even though the chances were slim if he could find one, it would undoubtedly be a great boost to the development of the Yingshan Immortal Academy. However, he did not expect that one of the large secret places of inheritance of the Ying-Tian sect would still be preserved. These so-called secret places of the Ying-Tian sect could actually be divided into 3 levels: the Spirit Gathering Secret Place, the Spirit Vein Secret Place, and the Inheritance Secret Place. The Spirit Gathering Secret Place was actually a spirit gathering place that was rich in spirit energy and opened up into a spirit herb garden or a spirit plant garden. The scale was not large, and only a few simple formations were used to conceal it to prevent wild beasts from destroying the things inside. These so-called secret places were the most numerous. Lu Ping did not expect these so-called secret places, which could be discovered by a core forging cultivator's divine will, to be passed down. The spirit vein was a secret place that the Ying-Tian sect had opened up using some of the scattered spirit veins in the Yingshan mountain range. This place was usually protected by a more complete formation, and there were disciples of the Ying-Tian sect stationed in the secret place, specializing in protection and cultivation. Although these secret places were more secretive, after the destruction of the Ying-Tian sect, these secret places were continuously found by cultivators in the Yingshan mountain range. Now, even Lu Ping was not confident that 1 or 2 of these secret places would still exist. The most secretive places were the inheritance secret places. These secret places were generally divided into 2 types. One was the inheritance place that the Ying-Tian sect had opened up using a heavenly grotto heaven magic treasure, like the Ying-Su treasured mirror that Lu Ping had discovered and taken away by Jiang Tianlin Laozu. The other type was the grotto heaven space that the powerful cultivators of the Ying-Tian sect had opened up in the Yingshan mountain range using some spatial cracks. These 2 types of secret places were the essence of the Ying-Tian sect's inheritance. They were also the true goal of the people behind the destruction of the Ying-Tian sect. However, other than cultivators like Fei Tian Laozu in the Ying-Tian sect, no one knew how many of these secret places the Ying-Tian sect had opened up. Even a cunning rabbit had 3 burrows, let alone a large sect that had been passed down for tens of thousands of years. For thousands of years, what truly attracted the cultivators of the various sects to come to the Yingshan mountain range were these large secret inheritances that had yet to be discovered. Once found, it would be a lifetime of wealth for any cultivator. The secret place that Lu Ping was looking for in the Divine Fist Basin was an inheritance secret place that was opened up in a spatial crack that was passed down by the Ying-Tian sect. This secret place was called the Broken Bone Grotto Heaven by the Ying-Tian sect, but it was now called the Fist Valley Grotto Heaven. During the battle that destroyed the Ying-Tian sect, Fei Tian Laozu originally wanted to transfer the treasures in this grotto heaven to the dojo, but unexpectedly he was stopped by a cultivator of the same realm. This cultivator did not know Fei Tian Laozu's intentions. When a Fei Tian Laozu wanted to escape, he simply punched down and wanted to stop him from escaping. However, he did not expect that the grotto heaven that was opened up in the spatial crack would collapse. Fei Tian Laozu originally thought that this space would definitely no longer exist, but he did not expect that it would be preserved in the end. Moreover, because the depths of the spatial crack were extremely unstable, after suffering an attack from a powerful cultivator, some unknown changes occurred. As a result, although this space was preserved, there were many restrictions that prevented cultivators from entering and leaving as they pleased. This space was originally a secret shared by the Ying-He, Yingshan, and Dao space sects. The space would open once every 300 years, and every time it opened, the large amounts of 500-year-old and 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs produced in the space would be an important source of medicinal pills for the cultivators of the 3 sections. The Yingshan Immortal Academy naturally did not know about this space, but when the Immortal Academy first expanded its forces, it had unintentionally marked this space as the edge of its territory. As a result, the other 2 sects were slightly unwilling. These 2 sects naturally did not want the Immortal Academy to know about the location of this space. As the space that opened once every 300 years approached, this was also one of the reasons why the Mountain Universe sect and the Jianghu family had fought against the Yingshan Immortal Academy. They hoped to chase the Immortal Academy out of this region and protect the secret here. However, no matter what, the Yingshan Immortal Academy still withstood the pressure in the end. Yushang Laozu clearly knew that her Mountain Universe sect alone could not maintain a balance with the Gu family in the Yingshan mountain range. This secret was ultimately revealed to Guotianshan Laozu when the 4 Laozu discussed it. The talisman that Guotianshan Laozu gave to Lu Ping was naturally in the hope that he could lead the disciples of the Immortal Academy to the secret space. In the past, the three sects had obtained close to 50,000 stalks of 500-year-old spirit herbs and 5,000 stalks of 1,000-year-old spirit herbs. This was an enormous wealth that could not be ignored. Lu Ping thought back to when he first entered Fei Ling Island. Back then, the total amount of 500-year spirit herbs collected by the various sects was only equal to the amount produced in this space. As for the 1,000-year spirit herbs, the difference was too great, only 1/10 of the amount produced in this space. It had to be known that Fei Ling Island was where Fei Ling sect's Dao right was located. Even though this Dao right had already been plundered, it was still nourished by a large spirit vein. Moreover, it would only appear once every 500 years. This space was merely one of the secret areas opened by the Ying Tian sect, and it would open once every 300 years. This could not be said to be small. Could there really be such a huge difference between the North Sea and the Central Plains? Lu Ping knew that there were naturally many other factors that could not be generalized. However, there was no doubt that the Central Plains was far more fertile than the North Sea's cultivation world. Lu Ping weighed the pros and cons and finally decided to go to this partially collapsed secret space to investigate first. Even though he knew that Guotianshan Laozu must have already investigated this place beforehand, Lu Ping still trusted his own eyes and senses more. His divine will, which was not inferior to that of an early Dharma adept, constantly lingered around a cliff in this basin. Lu Ping's brows furrowed slightly. Clearly, when the opponent who was on par with Fei Tian Laozu smashed down with his fist, the secret space's entrance had been smashed into pieces. Although this secret space was fortunately preserved, the entrance to the secret space had already collapsed. Every 300 years, the collapsed space would recover for a short period of time. However, it was extremely fragile. Once a mid-blood condensation realm cultivator or above entered, the recovered space would collapse again, and the cultivator would die. After several lessons, the three sects came to the conclusion that only adepts who were below the early blood condensation could enter. Naturally, Lu Ping did not come here to verify the lessons he had learned from the three sects' bloody lessons. Instead, he came here because of the records he had obtained from Fei Tian Laozu's pure Yang soul. The Broken Bone Cave Heaven, which was now known as the Fist Valley Cave Heaven, was not only a space that produced 500-year-old spirit herbs and 1,000-year-old spirit herbs, but the number of 3,000-year-old spirit herbs in this cave was also quite considerable. More importantly, this grotto heaven was filled with 3,000-year-old spirit herbs that were extremely rare in the cultivation world. They were essential for refining the spirit forging pill. However, in the past 4,000 years, the three sects' cultivators had not obtained even a single 3,000-year-old spirit herb from the Fist Valley Cave Heaven. Why was that? Chapter 705. The Fist Valley's secret ground would open for 3 months. Each time, the three sects would send 60 early-stage blood condensation cultivators into the secret ground. Each sect would send 20 people. This time, however, it was different. The Gu family was powerful. Even though Patriarch Celestial Mountain and Patriarch Yushang did their best to fight for it, the Yingshan Immortal Academy and Mountain Universe sect only had 18 slots each. As for the Gu family, they had 24. 3 days later, a huge streak of light approached from afar. When it got closer, it turned out to be a huge puppet bird. The bird landed on the ground, and more than 20 cultivators alighted from its back. Apart from enlightened Master Jianming and a late core forging cultivator, there was also a mid-core forging cultivator who was greeting the remaining 24 third-layer blood condensation cultivators. The cultivators seemed to be talking to these disciples seriously, and from time to time, the disciples would nod their heads in acknowledgement. After the 2 late-stage core forging cultivators got off the puppet bird, they didn't put it away. Instead, they immediately set up several soundproof restrictions around them. Only then could they see the mid-stage core forging cultivator talking to the disciples. The disciples opened and closed their mouths, but no sound came out. Just when the mid-stage core forging cultivator finished giving some important instructions to the disciples and passed something to the leaders of the 24 disciples, enlightened Master Jianming reached out to break the soundproof restriction around them. He said respectfully to the cultivator, "Thank you, Master Gu." The mid-stage core forging cultivator waved his hand and said, "It's fine. The Fist Valley Grotto Heaven is very important. It's only right to give detailed instructions. It's all thanks to Brother Jianming for telling us everything about the secret ground." Enlightened Master Jianming smiled awkwardly. The late-stage core forging cultivator next to him said, "Fifth brother, you forgot that Brother Jianming is now a guest elder of the clan. You are a member of the Gu clan. Why do you need to say anything? Master Gu patted his forehead and smiled. Eighth brother is right. It's my fault. Brother Jianming, please don't blame me. Enlightened Master Jianming quickly waved his hand. I don't dare. At this moment, Enlightened Master Jianming's expression changed. The late-stage core forging cultivator next to him, the eighth brother, said, Magic Cloud Yarn? Looks like it's Dao Yu. Oh, it's the Mountain Universe sect. Daoist Jianming smiled and said, That's right. This Magic Cloud muslin belongs to the Dao Universe sect and the current Mountain Universe sect's late core forging cultivator, Pang Feiyun. As soon as Enlightened Jianming finished speaking, a colorful cloud separated from the clouds in the sky. However, my uncle Yushang Laozu has previously said that although this enlightened Shen Ping from the Yingshan Immortal Academy has concealed his true face so that even Dharma adepts cannot see through him, his level of practice is a true 8th level core forging practitioner. Also, from the aura around him, it seems that he has not broken through for too long. Fellow enlightened flying rainbow, could it be that the phenomenon that appeared in the Yingshan Immortal Academy was caused when enlightened Shen Ping broke through to the 8th level core forging practitioner? How is that possible? Isn't a phenomenon like the reverse flow of spiritual energy something that can only happen to Dharma adepts? Enlightened Flying Rainbow laughed and said, Fellow Enlightened Guzhou's words are not without reason. However, if the phenomenon that caused the reverse flow of spiritual energy was not caused by this enlightened Shen Ping, doesn't that mean that other than Guotianshan Laozu, there is another Dharma adept hiding in the dark? Enlightened Guzhou's expression was one of shock. Next to him, his eighth brother, Enlightened Guhun, laughed and said, I think that it is impossible for there to be two Laozus in the Yingshan Immortal Academy. That phenomenon was either created by Guotianshan Laozu to confuse the public, or it was really caused by enlightened Shen Ping's breakthrough. Enlightened Guhun saw that his sixth brother did not understand and was about to retort, so he hurriedly laughed and said, Sixth brother, listen to me first. In the past, I followed my second uncle to travel and heard that the elite disciples of some large sects with deep foundations and those large sects that are known as holy lands for cultivation have late core forging practitioners who can match Dharma adepts. When these people break through, even if they are only late core forging practitioners, they can cause a phenomenon like the reverse flow of spiritual energy. There is such a thing? Not just enlightened Guzhou, but the other enlightened masters were also shocked. Why not? Enlightened Guhun laughed bitterly and shook his head. Recently, the biggest news in the cultivation world is that Yuan Feixiang of the Yuan clan killed a blood demon at the 9th level of core forging. Although the lightning magic passed down in the Yuan clan is the most effective way to counter Shura and demonic practitioners, it still shocked the cultivation world that a 9th level core forging practitioner could kill a blood demon that is stronger than an ordinary early Dharma adept. And it is said that when this Yuan Feixiang broke through to the 9th level of core forging, he caused the phenomenon of the reverse flow of spiritual energy. This, Enlightened Guzhou said in disbelief. Could this small Yingshan Immortal Academy produce a disciple that can match those holy lands for cultivation and the number 1 clan in the Central Plains? Only 4 of them were at the 3rd level of the blood condensation realm, 10 of them were at the 2nd level, and 6 of them were at the 1st level of the blood condensation realm. Contrary to the mockery and contempt on the faces of the disciples from the other sects, the enlightened masters who were leading the core forging realm cultivators looked surprised. It was not because the Yingshan Immortal Academy could not gather 18 early-stage blood condensation realm cultivators. On the contrary, it was because they were able to gather 18 early-stage blood condensation realm disciples. Chapter 706. These enlightened masters were all mid-stage core forging cultivators and above. They were naturally able to see the backgrounds of the Yingshan Immortal Academy's disciples. Among these disciples, only one seemed to have sealed his cultivation from the mid-stage blood condensation realm to the 3rd level. The other 17 disciples were all inner disciples of Immortal Academy. These days, the two factions had a certain understanding of Yingshan Immortal Academy's power structure. They also had a certain grasp of the number of disciples in Yingshan Immortal Academy. In the eyes of these enlightened masters, the Yingshan Immortal Academy had only been established for 10 years. In these 10 years, it had grown from nothing to something. With the current scale of recruitment, it would already be considered good if they could produce 10 blood condensation disciples. Moreover, most of them would be at the first level of the blood condensation realm. Even if there were some geniuses who could reach the second level of the blood condensation realm, it would be extremely rare. However, the truth was that not only did Yingshan Immortal Academy's inner disciples exceed their expectations, they even had 3 third-level blood condensation cultivators and 10 second-level blood condensation cultivators. How could these enlightened masters not be shocked? Originally, both sects had sent spies to infiltrate Yingshan Immortal Academy as outer sect disciples. Some of these spies were only in the early stage of blood condensation. According to the two sects' original guess, if Yingshan Immortal Academy couldn't gather 18 early-stage blood condensation disciples, they could only choose from the outer sect disciples. As such, there was a high chance that these spies would be chosen. Once these spies entered the Fist Valley space, the two factions would definitely be able to make Yingshan Immortal Academy suffer a loss in the Fist Valley space. Although this method wouldn't shake Yingshan Immortal Academy's foundation, it could slow down their development. Even though Mountain Universe sect needed to borrow the power of Immortal Academy to fight against the Gu clan, they clearly didn't want another equally powerful Yingshan Immortal Academy to appear in the process of fighting against the Gu clan. Since there was such a chance, Mountain Universe sect naturally wouldn't mind making Yingshan Immortal Academy suffer a loss. But now, Yingshan Immortal Academy's disciples were all inner sect disciples. These disciples were all seedlings that Yingshan Immortal Academy had recruited from the surrounding mortal villages by activating their bloodlines. They had clean backgrounds and had grown up in Yingshan Immortal Academy. They viewed Yingshan Immortal Academy as their second parent. It would be very difficult for the two sects to convert such disciples in a short period of time. These enlightened masters naturally knew some of the secrets of their sections. When they saw the Yingshan Immortal Academy bring out 18 blood condensation disciples, they recalled enlightened Master Gu Hun's speculation that the Yingshan Immortal Academy might be a large sect that had secretly infiltrated the Yingshan mountain range. This time they were more convinced of this speculation. Compared to the other enlightened masters who valued Yingshan Immortal Academy a little more, enlightened Gu Zhou was looking at enlightened Xian Fang in the soundproof restriction with a serious expression. When enlightened Master Fei Hong saw that enlightened Gu Zhou was looking elsewhere, he also followed his gaze and looked at enlightened Xian Fang. After a while he said with some surprise, "This Yingshan Immortal Academy really isn't a newly established faction. This enlightened master doesn't look old, and his cultivation has only just broken through to the middle stage of core forging. However, if I'm not wrong, I'm afraid he's an alchemy master." Enlightened Gu Zhou nodded and said, "If this Guotianshan established Yingshan Immortal Academy on a whim, how could he have prepared every aspect of a sect in a short 10 years? With the words of the two alchemy masters, Pang Feiyun, Gu Hun and enlightened Jian Ming naturally didn't doubt them. Thus they valued Yingshan Immortal Academy even more. An alchemy master wasn't something that could be achieved easily. It was as difficult for an itinerant cultivator to become an alchemy master as it was for an itinerant cultivator to reach the Dharma manifestation stage. Although alchemy masters had a transcendent status in the cultivation world, their achievements couldn't be separated from a large amount of spiritual herbs for them to practice with. Without the support of a faction, it was extremely difficult to achieve anything. After enlightened Xian Fang finished giving his instructions, he removed the soundproof restriction and heard enlightened Gu Zhou say, "I wonder which two late-stage core forging Taoists your sect has sent. This Fist Valley space requires 6 late-stage core forging cultivators to work together to open it. If it's only Taoist Lu Shenyuan, I think it's fine not to open the Fist Valley space." Lu Shenyuan was only at the 6th level of core forging realm. When he heard this he smiled unhurriedly and said, "Taoist Lu, you worry too much. When the space opens my sect will naturally send someone over." Enlightened Gu Zhou didn't ask who would come. Yingshan Immortal Academy currently only had enlightened Xian Ping and enlightened Xian Tian, 2 late-stage core forging elders. If there were other late-stage core forging cultivators from Yingshan Immortal Academy that came, it would only mean that Yingshan Immortal Academy's hidden power was even stronger. Spiritual Master Gu Hun's thoughts ran deeper. He had once traveled the world, and his horizons and knowledge were not comparable to those around him. But now he recalled an explosive rumor about the overseas cultivation world that he had heard decades ago in the East River. In the East Sea, a power called the Carefree Sect suddenly rose up and broke through the many obstacles of the Crystal Palace, sailing their treasured ship to the Tianyue sect of the Central Plains. They formed an alliance with the Tianyue sect, which had always been the first to bear the brunt of the Crystal Palace's attempts to extend their power into the Central Plains. They built an ultra-long-distance teleportation matrix, causing the Carefree sect to live up to its name as a large sect. Before this Carefree sect rose up, it had changed its name to Boudoir, and operated as a secret power for many years. Only then did it grow strong under the nose of the Crystal Palace. Once it rose up, even the Crystal Palace did not expect it. It was a classic case of a fire in their own backyard. This caused the Crystal Palace, which had always dominated the East Sea and expanded its power everywhere, to lose a lot of face in the cultivation world. Could it be that Yingshan Immortal Academy was also a chess piece of some sect to expand its power? Perfected Gu Hun's heart sank. If this was really the case, the Gu clan really could not shed all pretense of cordiality. If the power behind the other party became angry out of humiliation, the Gu clan could barely be considered a medium-sized power in the Central Plains cultivation world. There were 3 mid-Dharma adepts and 5 early Dharma adepts in the clan. They might not be able to withstand the anger of the other party. As Perfected Gu Hun thought of this, he heard Perfected Gu Zhou turn to ask Xian Fang, who was behind Perfected Lu Xinyuan, "This young friend is not bad. Recently you seem to have been refining some mid-core forging elixirs. It seems that your success rate in refining mid-core forging elixirs is not low." Perfected Gu Hun was stunned. He knew that this was Perfected Gu Zhou's intention to establish his power. A few days ago in the Battle of Yingshan Immortal Academy, the 3 heroes of the Gu clan were defeated by the opposing elder, Perfected Xianping, with 2 swords. This time, Perfected Gu Zhou clearly wanted to regain this face. Perfected Gu Hun wanted to stop him, but thinking that alchemists had their own rules of the alchemy world, it was better for him not to interfere. Moreover, Perfected Gu Hun was very dissatisfied with the fact that Yingshan Immortal Academy had trampled on the 3 heroes of the Gu clan to establish their own foundation. Naturally, he was happy to see the other party make a fool of himself. Perfected Xian Fang was stunned when he heard Perfected Gu Zhou's words. He immediately knew that the other party was provoking him. There were 2 main types of sparring between alchemists in the world of alchemy. The first type was to compete in alchemy. If the level was serious, it could even directly trigger a cauldron-smashing agreement, until one side admitted defeat and destroyed the cauldron, completely withdrawing from the alchemy world. This was also considered a duel in the alchemy world. Back then, Lu Ping had once made a cauldron-smashing agreement with Yu Jianghu in the Qinyuan Palace of the Northern Alliance in the East Sea. Later, after mediation by the Northern Alliance's Hongya Laozu, Perfected Qin, and the others, although Yu Jianghu did not smash his cauldron, he was now the alchemy master of Soundwave Island, which Lu Ping managed in the East Sea. The other type was to probe each other's secrets. Alchemists dealt with flames, cauldrons, and various kinds of spirit herbs all year round. It was inevitable that they would reveal their achievements in alchemy as well as other secrets. This method of alchemists was to see who could see through the other side's secrets, guess the other side's alchemy level, and know that the other side bowed their head in respect. Although Perfected Xian Fang was also an alchemy genius, he had only been an alchemy master for a few decades. How could his experience be compared to someone like Perfected Gu Zhou, who had been immersed in alchemy for hundreds of years? Although Perfected Xian Fang also tried to find some clues from Perfected Gu Zhou, he had to admit that Perfected Gu Zhou's alchemy skills were above his own. He couldn't detect any subtle changes in Perfected Gu Zhou's alchemy skills. He could only cup his hands and say, "Your Excellency's alchemy skills must be extraordinary. Refining a late-core forging pill is not a problem." Perfected Gu Zhou smiled proudly and said, "That's right. I can see that Your Excellency has recently been refining a pill suitable for cultivators with metal attribute bloodlines. I wonder if Your Excellency can guess what pill I've been refining recently?" Perfected Xian Fang's face turned red. Just as he released his divine sense, it was blocked by a divine sense that was far stronger than his. He couldn't find anything from Perfected Gu Zhou. At this time, Perfected Master Fei Hong from the Mountain Universe sect seemed to be unable to hold back his loneliness. He opened his mouth and giggled, "Little friend, the pill you've refined recently shouldn't have been more than 3 days ago. Looking at the residual pill chi around little friend's body, I'm afraid your success rate is not low." Both of them called Perfected Master Xian Fang little friend. Perfected Master Xian Fang was an alchemy grandmaster and was respected by many. Now that he was being looked down upon, his alchemy skills were inferior to these 2, and his cultivation was even worse. His face turned red with anger, but he couldn't refute a single word. Just as perfected Master Lu Xianyuan sensed that something was wrong and was about to change the topic, he saw perfected Master Xianfang's eyes brighten when he looked behind him. Perfected Master Lu Xianyuan immediately guessed something and was delighted. Everyone also noticed the abnormality in perfected Master Xianfang's expression. When they turned to look, they didn't know when, but behind the Mountain Universe sect and the Gu clan, which was in front of the Yingshan Immortal Academy disciples, a cultivator had suddenly appeared there without anyone noticing. When perfected Master Jianming saw this person, he immediately felt a bitter taste in his mouth. However, his expression was still calm as he forced a smile and said, "So it's perfected Master Xianping." The other cultivators from the Mountain Universe sect and the Gu clan were shocked. They saw this cultivator who looked to be around the same age as perfected Master Xianfang appear behind them without anyone noticing. If this person launched a sneak attack, they didn't know who would be able to block it. When they thought of the method this person used to defeat the Gu clan's 3 heroes, they watched as perfected Master Xianping walked through the 2 sects cultivators as if there was no one around and walked towards the Yingshan Immortal Academy disciples. They unconsciously took 2 steps back to make way for him. Chapter 707. Other than one of the 18 blood condensation disciples standing behind Taoist Xianfang, none of them knew what Taoist Xianfang and the 2 core forging enlightened masters were talking about. However, they could tell that Taoist Xianfang was at a disadvantage in the argument. Naturally, they were all holding back their anger. When they heard Taoist Jianming say that this person was Immortal Academy's most mysterious elder Xianping, the disciples' spirits were shaken. Even though they had long heard that this elder Xianping was a cultivator even younger than elder Xiantian, they still couldn't help but exclaim in surprise when they saw Lu Ping. As Lu Ping's cultivation continued to increase, his youthful appearance attracted more and more attention. Although Lu Ping used a face-changing secret technique to hide his true appearance, his youthfulness did not change at all. Although Lu Ping had the recipe for the Agerasia pill and would occasionally refine some Agerasia pills for sale in the pill pavilion, he had never taken a pill himself. The reason why Lu Ping was still able to maintain the appearance of a young man in his 20s was not only because of his long lifespan, but also because he had refined 2 portions of Myriad Wonder Jade Dew, a total of 72 drops of Myriad Wonder Jade Dew. This kind of heaven-grade spirit item had the effect of prolonging one's lifespan, and one of its side effects was to slow down the aging of one's face. Lu Ping strode to Taoist Lu Xianyuan and said with a smile, "Greetings, senior brother Lu." Although Lu Xianyuan did not know why Lu Ping came to the Fist Valley in advance, he knew that Lu Ping had been to the Yingtian dojo before, so he might know something that others did not. So, he asked with a smile, "Have you gained anything these days?" Lu Ping nodded with a smile and said, "Although it's disappointing, at least I have some confidence in my heart." After saying that, he turned to Taoist Xianfang and said with a smile, "Junior brother, your alchemy skills have improved recently." Taoist Master Xianfang sighed and said, "I've made senior brother laugh at me. Originally, junior brother had made some progress in refining mid-core forging pills, so I planned to refine late-core forging pills. But today I realized that I was biting off more than I could chew." Lu Ping chuckled and said, "Why do you have to be like this? These 2 are alchemy masters who have been practicing alchemy for hundreds of years. That flying rainbow Jinren is an alchemy master who can refine elixirs that are half a step to the Dharma stage. From the time you started practicing until now, you haven't even been a master for as long as they have. How can you possibly be a match for them? If you had reached their age, I'm afraid you would have already become an alchemy grandmaster. They wouldn't be able to catch up to you even if they whipped their horses." Lu Ping's words caused Taoist Master Xianfang's eyes to light up. But then he remembered that Lu Ping's cultivation time was actually about the same as his own, but Lu Ping was already an alchemy grandmaster and had great strength. Taoist Master Xianfang couldn't help but sigh. Lu Ping patted his shoulder and looked at the Immortal Academy disciples behind him. When he saw that Du Jialua was among them, Lu Ping wasn't too surprised. But when he saw that Tianyu, who was originally at the 6th level of the blood condensation realm, had also sealed his cultivation, he couldn't help but frown. Lu Ping turned to look at Master Flying Rainbow and Master Gu Zhou behind him. Both of them had obviously heard Lu Ping's words of admonition to Taoist Master Xianfang, especially Master Flying Rainbow. When Lu Ping had seen through his alchemy realm, he couldn't help but feel a little frightened. This person had such a high cultivation, could it be that he was also proficient in alchemy? If that was really the case, then what kind of realm had his alchemy reached? Before Master Flying Rainbow and Master Guzhou could figure out this problem, they heard Lu Ping's calm voice suddenly say, "Void Flame Pill." Master Flying Rainbow was stunned, while Master Guzhou's expression changed greatly. However, Lu Ping didn't stop there. He looked at enlightened Master Guzhou and said, "You haven't concocted any medicinal pellets in the past 3 days, so this cauldron of medicinal pellets must have been concocted 3 days ago. However, the success rate doesn't seem to be too high. It should be below 50%, but it should be above 30%. Enlightened Master Guzhou stared at Lu Ping in a daze, speechless. 3 days ago, he had indeed concocted the void flame pellets with a success rate of around 40%. But how could this person in front of him know that? Master Guzhou couldn't sense the slightest bit of smoke around Lu Ping. This could only mean that this person's alchemy skills were far superior to his, or he wasn't an alchemist at all. Moreover, no matter what, Master Guzhou felt that Master Shenping was the second type. But if he wasn't an alchemist, how could he have such an understanding of alchemy? This was not a realm that could be reached through experience and foresight. Without personally practicing alchemy, it was impossible to understand the mutual scheming between alchemists. Master Guzhou's attitude changed greatly and he asked carefully, "May I ask if you are an alchemy grandmaster?" Master Guzhou's words made Master Gu Hun and Master Jian Ming tremble. They naturally knew how high the status of an alchemy grandmaster was. An alchemy grandmaster at the core forging stage had a status comparable to a Dharma adept in the cultivation world. Although the Gu family's strength wasn't too high among the middle-sized forces and central plains, they still had some ambition. However, the Gu family's biggest weakness was that they didn't have an alchemy grandmaster in the family, and this weakness had greatly hindered the Gu family's development and strength for the past few hundred years. Therefore, no one could have a stronger desire for an alchemy grandmaster than the Gu family practitioners. Reverend Pang Feiyun of the Mountain Universe sect, who had always been a man of few words, also had a change in expression. He glanced at Reverend Fei Hong, who was beside him, and saw that Reverend Fei Hong's expression was serious. Lu Ping smiled and didn't answer Master Guzhou's question. His divine will was comparable to that of a Dharma adept like Changhe Laozu. If he didn't want to, these two people, even though they were alchemy grandmasters, and their divine wills were superior compared to other adepts of the same level, how could they compare to Lu Ping? Naturally, they wouldn't be able to discover anything. What's more, Lu Ping cultivated a water elemental cultivation technique. Compared to most alchemists in the cultivation world who cultivated wood elemental or fire elemental cultivation techniques, his identity as an alchemist was undoubtedly more concealed and deceptive. Lu Ping then turned to look at Reverend Fei Hong and said, "My friend, the alchemy pill you refined earlier was the Qilin pill? Although this kind of pill is ordinary among alchemy pills half a step into the Dharma stage, it's a rather good pill for a core forging adept who has merged with a third type of spiritual item." Reverend Fei Hong's face turned pale. He wanted to say something but there was only bitterness in his voice. The Qilin pill was considered ordinary? She was the top alchemist of the Mountain Universe sect, and her position in the sect had always been high. Even Yushang Laozu favored her, hoping that she would become the first alchemy grandmaster of the Mountain Universe sect. However, Reverend Fei Hong knew how difficult it was to become an alchemy grandmaster. Although she had already concocted a half-step Dharma realm medicinal pellet, just as Lu Ping had said, the Qipeng pellet was only one of the most common and low-grade medicinal pellets among the half-step Dharma realm medicinal pellets. There was still a long way to go before it could be used to concoct a cultivation-level medicinal pellet. And now, the Qilin pill could be said to be the limit of her alchemy skills. A faint green light flashed in Lu Ping's eyes, and the divine senses that were drifting around Reverend Guzhou and Reverend Fei Hong also withdrew without them realizing it. However, it seemed that Lu Ping did not intend to stop there, and he turned to look at Reverend Guzhou. Reverend Guzhou's heart skipped a beat for no reason and he heard Lu Ping say, "You used a mid-earth level spiritual fire, right? This grade of spiritual fire is enough to refine the void flame pill." However, although the void flame pill is only a late core forging stage alchemy pill, its medicinal effects are fierce like fire. Cultivators who consume this pill will either waste a large portion of the medicinal effects, or their cultivation will increase by leaps and bounds in a short period of time. Lu Ping ignored Reverend Guzhou's shocked expression and continued, "Therefore it is best to use a high earth level spiritual fire for this type of pill. Only then can the medicinal effects of the pill be even more fierce. I presume that the cultivators in your family who can consume this type of pill have already learned how to control the fierce medicinal effects. Thus, Even if you use a high earth-level spiritual fire, you won't have to worry about wasting the medicinal effects. Instead, it can further promote their cultivation. Reverend Gu Zhou hesitated for a moment, as if he was thinking about what Lu Ping had said. After a moment, although he was unwilling, he still bowed to Lu Ping and said, "Thank you for your guidance." When Lu Ping turned to look at Reverend Fei Hong, he saw a pair of eager eyes as if eagerly waiting for something. Lu Ping was startled for a moment, then said, "Your alchemy skills are already quite high. Originally, I didn't want to say much, but the wondrous panacea is all about the word, strange, yet you used the conventional alchemy method to refine it. Although with your alchemy skills, you still managed to form the pill, the success rate was still affected." Reverend Fei Hong's eyes flickered. Just like Reverend Gu Zhou, he bowed to Lu Ping and thanked him. In the world of alchemy, those who had reached the pinnacle were first. With just a few words, Lu Ping had subdued the two alchemy masters who had just made Reverend Xianfang into a sorry state. With just a few pointers, the two alchemy masters bowed and thanked him. Not to mention the disciples from Immortal Academy whose faces were already filled with admiration. Even Jian Ming, Gu Hun and Pang Feiyun, the three reverends, had looks of disbelief on their faces. Their gazes towards Lu Ping had also changed from reverence to respect. The moment Reverend Lu Xinyuan appeared, he knew that Lu Ping would definitely humiliate himself through the competition between alchemy masters. What a joke! What was Lu Ping's identity? Junling was the youngest alchemy grandmaster. Lu Xinyuan had heard his teacher, Guotianshan Laozu, mention it in private. Qianlu Laozu had once said with a sigh that the day Lu Ping reached the Dharma stage would be the day his alchemy skills would surpass his own. Furthermore, Lu Xinyuan had guessed from the hints in Guotianshan Laozu's words that Lu Ping seemed to have several secret pill formulas on him. These pill formulas might even be precious items that could affect Junling's future, and Guotianshan Laozu's advancement to the Dharma stage also seemed to be directly related to Lu Ping. Reverend Lu Xinyuan knew that his teacher was actually hinting to him to maintain the friendship he had established with Lu Ping in Junling's side courtyard. That way, it might be of great help to him in the future when he advanced to the Dharma stage. Chapter 708. In fact, what perfected Lu Xinyuan didn't know was that after Junling obtained many inheritances from the Ying Tian sect, Lu Ping was naturally most concerned about the inheritance related to alchemy. Naturally, Junling wouldn't hide anything from Lu Ping. In the past 10 years, apart from closed-door cultivation, Lu Ping had been studying alchemy and reading the inheritance ancient books. In addition, he had received the pure Yang soul inheritance from Fei Tian Laozu, so his knowledge level had been significantly improved. He was no longer the same as the Lu Ping who had just become an alchemy guru 10 years ago. Putting aside the fact that Lu Ping's words made perfected Gu Zhou and perfected Fei Hong lose their reserve and pride in front of Lu Ping, perfected Lu Xinyuan saw that although Lu Ping had the upper hand, it also made the situation a little awkward. Hence, he smiled and said, "Since we're all here, there shouldn't be much difference in time. I think we should start preparing to open the Fist Valley space now." Perfected Lu Xuanyuan's words received everyone's approval, but perfected Jian Ming looked at Lu Ping with some hesitation and said, "Opening the Fist Valley space now is naturally not a problem, but opening the Fist Valley space requires the cooperation of 6 late-stage core forging realm cultivators. We naturally won't doubt perfected Lu Xuanyuan's strength, but it's inevitably a little inappropriate if one person takes care of 2 places to open the formation." Perfected Lu Xinyuan was stunned. Tianshan Laozu didn't tell him about this before they came. Now it seemed that Tianshan Laozu only sent Lu Ping, a late-stage core forging realm cultivator. Now that he heard perfected Jian Ming's words, perfected Lu Xinyuan couldn't help but look back at Lu Ping. Lu Ping naturally knew what perfected Lu Xinyuan meant, so he smiled and said, "This time, I'm the only late-stage core forging realm cultivator from Immortal Academy, but don't worry, there won't be any mistakes in opening the space channel." Lu Ping's words naturally couldn't convince everyone here. If there was a careless mistake, everyone would have to wait for another 300 years, not to mention the loss of a large number of spiritual herbs. Lu Ping revealed a faint smile. A pair of flying swords suddenly appeared in Lu Ping's surroundings. Then, under the fearful eyes of the other sect's true masters, as well as the fanatical eyes of Immortal Academy's disciples, autumn waters faintly sword pointed, one towards the southeast, one towards the southwest, the two separately flying out 3 to 5 li. Then, under the shocked eyes of Taoist Master Ji, who knew how many times, he casually displayed several sets of ordinary sword techniques. Taoist Master Jianming finally guessed why Lu Ping suddenly appeared behind them. This Taoist Master Xianping must have investigated the collapsed space in advance, but what made Taoist Master Jianming feel strange was that besides alchemy, this Taoist Master Xianping was also interested in space arrays and other miscellaneous knowledge. The distance between the two flying swords was exactly the distance between the 6 bases of the space arrays to open the space. Compared to Taoist Master Jianming, who was quite knowledgeable in space arrays, Taoist Master Gu Hun and Pang Feiyun paid attention to Lu Ping's powerful divine sense. The strength of a cultivator's attack depended on the cultivator's cultivation and true essence, and the range of the attack was limited by the range of the cultivator's divine sense. The fact that Lu Ping could display the 2 flying swords from such a distance proved that Lu Ping's divine sense cultivation far surpassed everyone else's. Taoist Master Jianming laughed dryly and said, "In that case, let's begin. There's no hurry." Lu Ping waved his hand and said, "Although junior brother Xianfang has already instructed the sect's disciples, I came late because of some matters. There are still some matters that I need to take note of, so please wait a moment." Taoist Master Jianming frowned and was about to refute. "You came late because of yourself. You can't let everyone wait for your Yingshan Immortal Academy." However, before he could say anything, he heard Taoist Master Gu Hun suddenly say with a smile, "Taoist Master Xianping, please do as you please. Anyway, the space will be open for a month, so it won't make much of a difference." Taoist Master Jianming bitterly shut his mouth and did not say anything. Lu Ping glanced at Taoist Master Jianming and smiled faintly. Then he stretched out his hand and waved. After Lu Ping's arm waved, a multicolored light enveloped him and the group of Immortal Academy disciples, leaving only Taoist Master Lu Xinyuan and Taoist Master Xianfang outside, exchanging pleasantries with the other 2 sects' cultivators. When Immortal Academy's disciples heard that Elder Xianping was actually going to personally instruct them on something, their faces immediately revealed excited expressions. What kind of person was Elder Xianping? He was publicly acknowledged as number 1 under Heavenly Mountain's old ancestor. It was to the extent where not a single disciple from Immortal Academy had ever seen Elder Xianping before. Outside the multicolored cloud, Pang Feiyun looked at the undulating cloud, and his eyes constantly flickered with an indescribable brilliance. Suddenly, Pang Feiyun seemed to have made up his mind about something. A ray of light flickered in his sleeve, but it was hidden by his sleeve. Lu Ping, who was hidden by the multicolored cloud, was about to give some instructions to the Immortal Academy disciples, but he suddenly frowned and sneered. It seems that the lesson was not enough. Pang Feiyun had been indifferent and silent since he arrived here, so his actions just now were not noticed by the people present. However, Pang Feiyun seemed to have noticed that his secret technique had worked, so he turned his body slightly, as if he wanted to put one ear in the direction of the multicolored cloud, so that he could detect something through the secret technique. However, at this moment, the originally calm multicolored cloud suddenly fluctuated violently like a huge wave. Everyone, including Taoist Master Lu Xinyuan and Taoist Master Xianfang, looked at the multicolored cloud behind them in surprise, but they heard Pang Feiyun let out a painful groan. When everyone looked at Pang Feiyun, they saw that his face was deathly pale, and there was a faint trace of blood seeping out of his left ear. Everyone immediately understood what was going on. Taoist Master Fei Hong sighed and took out a colorful bottle from the storage magic tool on his wrist. He poured out a crystal-clear pill from inside and handed it to Pang Feiyun to swallow. Taoist Master Xianfang looked at the pill that Taoist Master Fei Hong took out and couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. He had obviously recognized the name of the pill, and this pill was obviously a quite famous and precious item. Taoist Master Lu Xinyuan gave Pang Feiyun a meaningful look, but he didn't say anything. Taoist Master Fei Hong smiled awkwardly and didn't say anything. Only Pang Feiyun closed his eyes to refine the medicinal power after swallowing the pill. Lu Ping glanced coldly outside the cloud light 5 elements robe, then turned around to look at the Immortal Academy's disciples with reverence on their faces. He smiled and said, "You are all the elites of the Immortal Academy in the past 10 years. This time, entering the Fist Valley is undoubtedly an opportunity. If you can gain something from the space, the sect will naturally not be stingy with your rewards. The door to the mid-stage blood condensation realm will no longer be a problem for you. Once you cross the threshold of the mid-stage blood condensation realm, it means that you have the qualifications to become a disciple of the Immortal Academy's core forging masters. This means that you will receive more cultivation resources, more pointers, more profound cultivation techniques and more powerful spells. In the future, you will also be able to go further in the cultivation world. This was not Lu Ping boasting. With his current status, if he took care of these disciples a little, not to mention advancing to the mid-stage blood condensation realm, even the late-stage blood condensation realm would not be a problem. Many of the disciples were excited by Lu Ping's promises and words. They couldn't wait to enter the Fist Valley right now. Lu Ping glanced at the few disciples who were still calm, including Du Jialua and Tianyu, who had his cultivation sealed. He said calmly, "You don't have to be too happy. There are also great risks in the space. Remember, the most dangerous thing in the space is not the various dangers and the demonic beasts inside, but the cultivators from the various sects who entered with you." Looking at the solemn and thoughtful disciples in front of him, Lu Ping knew that they were naturally smart people who could stand out among hundreds of disciples in the past 10 years. They could naturally understand what he meant. Lu Ping waved his hand, and 18 jade slips appeared between the 18 disciples. Lu Ping gestured for everyone to pick up a jade slip, then he said, "These 18 jade slips record the map of the Fist Valley. Some areas with a higher concentration of spirit herbs are marked in the jade slips. There are also dozens of images of spirit herbs recorded at the bottom of the jade slips. Remember them all. Although these spirit herbs are 500-year and 1,000-year spirit herbs, they are extremely rare and precious compared to other spirit herbs. When you are harvesting spirit herbs in the space, you must prioritize harvesting these things." After everyone memorized the map and pictures of spiritual herbs in the jade slips, Tianyu was the first to crush the jade slip in his hand. The other disciples were surprised at first, but they immediately understood what Lu Ping meant and crushed the jade slips in their hands. Lu Ping nodded in satisfaction. He then flipped his palm, and another 18 talismans appeared in his hand. He said, "These 18 talismans have two effects. One is that after you enter the space, as long as you are not more than 5 miles away from each other, the talismans will sense each other. It will make it easier for you to gather together and work together." The 18 disciples were overjoyed. They picked up the talismans that landed in front of them and hid them close to their bodies. However, Lu Ping continued, "The second effect of these talismans is protection. I believe they can withstand a blow from a third-layer blood condensation cultivator without shattering. Originally, I would have given you guys better talismans. However, this space is very strange. Once the aura of a cultivator above the third layer of the blood condensation realm leaks out, the space around that cultivator will shatter. I don't need to say more about the result." After Lu Ping finished speaking, all the disciples trembled. Lu Ping's gaze turned to Tianyu. Tianyu had sealed his cultivation, but Lu Ping knew that Tianyu wasn't good at fighting. If he broke through the seal in a dangerous situation, only death would await Tianyu. Since Lu Ping already had the intention to accept disciples, he naturally wouldn't allow any accidents to happen to them. However, the rare look of determination on Tianyu's face surprised Lu Ping. According to Lu Ping's knowledge, although Tianyu was quite talented in the field of pill refinement, he was a relatively timid person. Originally, Lu Ping thought that the Immortal Academy sent him because they couldn't gather 18 blood condensation disciples. Now it seemed like Tianyu took the initiative to send him. Chapter 709. Lu Ping knew that Yingshan Immortal Academy's foundation was shallow. The cultivation of the 18 disciples was uneven and they didn't have much experience. If they entered the space now, it would be easy for others to take advantage of them. Thus, he had no choice but to rack his brains and leave behind more methods to prevent his own disciples from suffering heavy losses. In fact, Lu Ping also knew that this was the reason why Tianshan Laozu wanted him to come here. Lu Ping didn't care about the academy's matters for the past 10 years. Tianshan Laozu wanted him to worry about the academy. At the same time, he wanted to establish his prestige among the many disciples of Yingshan Immortal Academy. After receiving the spiritual talisman, the disciples saw that Lu Ping didn't remove the rainbow mist around them. They were overjoyed. Could it be that this elder Shen Ping was going to give them more treasures? Looking at the excited disciples around him, Tianyu couldn't help but twitch his mouth. This was nothing. It couldn't even be compared to a single hair in Taoist Shen Ping's 9 oxen. If they knew that this person in front of them was known as the boy of many treasures, who knew how shocked they would be? As expected, Lu Ping still had more methods to give out. He took out a spirit beast bag and formed a few hand seals towards the sealed spirit beast bag. The originally sealed spirit beast bag was immediately opened. A buzzing sound rang out, and under the expectant gazes of Tianyu and Tianyu's astonished gazes, 18 fist-sized demonic wasps flew out from the spirit beast pouch. Their transparent wings flapped rapidly, and they gave off an aura that struck fear into the hearts of all the disciples. These 18 demonic bees were all at the third layer of the core forging realm. Under Lu Ping's command, the 18 demonic bees landed on the shoulders of the disciples under the fearful gazes of the disciples. Lu Ping naturally wouldn't reveal the name of the amethyst wasps. He only said, "These are demon soldiers that I've specially trained." Each of these 18 wasps has a cultivation of the third layer of the blood condensation realm. Although the true cultivation of a demon soldier is far weaker than human or demonic beast cultivators of the same cultivation realm, they will still be of great help to you. Furthermore, these wasps have a special ability to sense spiritual herbs and flowers. When the time comes, you will have a map to refer to and the wasps to guide you. I believe that your harvest will not be inferior to the other two sects. Demon soldiers. The disciples carefully looked at the amethyst wasps on their shoulders, and their hearts surged with joy. Previously, when the Immortal Academy disciples saw that the other two sects were all at the third layer of the blood condensation realm, they were still a little apprehensive. But now, when they saw the third layer demonic bees on their shoulders, their previous apprehension was swept away. Because Wasp Queen Zilan had advanced to the core forging realm, the quality of the amethyst wasps in Lu Ping's hands had also greatly improved. More than a third of the thousands of amethyst wasps had advanced to the blood condensation realm. Although 3 of these amethyst wasps might not be as strong as a human or demonic beast cultivator of the same cultivation realm, it was already a great help to the Immortal Academy disciples. It was even more beneficial than giving them a high-grade magic tool. Actually, Lu Ping wanted to give them more so that every cultivator could control a batch of amethyst wasps. However, these wasps were Zilan's subordinates, and Zilan had recognized Lu Ping as her master. Even if Lu Ping wanted to give them the amethyst wasps, these disciples would not be able to control them with their spiritual will. It was better to give each of them 1 amethyst wasps. This way, under Zilan's orders, these disciples would be able to control the amethyst wasps with their own spiritual will. What's more, once the amethyst wasps were given to a disciple, if that disciple died and the amethyst wasps were obtained by others, the news of Yingshan Immortal Academy possessing the amethyst wasps would be exposed. Then, the newly established Immortal Academy would immediately be suppressed by the various powers, and the Immortal Academy might even vanish into thin air. Moreover, the amethyst wasps could not be separated from the queen bee for too long. If they were separated for too long, the amethyst wasps would either dissipate on their own, or a new queen bee would be born. No matter which scenario it was, Lu Ping was not willing to see it happen. However, if a cultivator only had 1 amethyst wasp, then there was no need to worry. Putting aside the fact that the amethyst wasps had disappeared from the cultivation world for so many years, it was doubtful that anyone would recognize them. Moreover, Lu Ping had also placed a restriction on these 18 amethyst wasps through Zilan. Once the aura of the cultivator they followed dissipated, they would also die. Lu Ping glanced at Du Jielua, and a trace of hesitation could be seen in his eyes. Following which, he seemed to have made up his mind. He raised his head and said, "The other disciples can leave for now. Only a few disciples at the third level of the blood condensation realm can stay. I have some instructions here." The other disciples looked at the only 4 disciples at the third level of the blood condensation realm from the Immortal Academy with looks of envy. Elder Xian Ping naturally had instructions for the few disciples with the highest cultivation to stay behind. Perhaps these people might even receive some benefits from Elder Xian Ping. However, they couldn't blame others for this. Who asked them to be weaker than Elder Xian Ping? Lu Ping saw 3 of the disciples looking smug. They all looked at Lu Ping with bright eyes, as if waiting for him to give them other instructions. Lu Ping smiled, then turned to Tianyu and asked, "Have you thought it through? You are not good at fighting. Now that your cultivation has been sealed, if you break the seal and use magic power beyond the third level of the blood condensation realm, you will die for sure." Tianyu hesitated for a moment when he heard Lu Ping's words, but his eyes regained clarity in an instant. He nodded at Lu Ping and said, "Don't worry, Uncle Master. Since disciple has already made up his mind, then life and death are up to fate." Lu Ping smiled and didn't say anything else. However, there was a trace of admiration in his eyes for Tianyu. Lu Ping looked at the 4 people in front of him and took out 4 more jade slips from his storage magic tool. He said, "The map I gave you earlier is actually not complete. There are 4 other maps in these 4 jade slips. They might record areas that the cultivators who entered before the space opened. There might be a large number of higher quality spiritual herbs in these areas. Tian Yu's eyes lit up. He was a true alchemist. Although Lu Ping's words were vague for a grandmaster like Lu Ping to say higher quality spiritual herbs, it meant that the spiritual herbs growing in these unknown areas were only 3,000 years old. Once you encounter these spiritual herbs, you don't have to hesitate. Just collect them as much as you want. However, there are more than 20 spiritual herbs that you have to pay special attention to. If you encounter these spiritual herbs, you have to collect them carefully and store them in a special spirit sealing jade box. Lu Ping naturally wouldn't just tell them about the rare 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs needed to refine the spirit forging pill. Instead, he arranged them in a random order with the other rare 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs. This way, even if someone saw these spiritual herbs, they wouldn't be able to associate them with the spirit forging pill. Lu Ping handed a few spirit sealing boxes made of jade crystals to the disciples and took out 4 small spirit beast pouches. The 4 of them didn't feel numb when they saw Lu Ping's endless methods. Instead, they were pleasantly surprised. Being able to see Elder Xian Ping today was enough for them to hold their heads high in front of everyone even if they didn't go to the Fist Valley. Lu Ping handed the 4 spirit beast bags to the 4 of them and passed a set of techniques to them. Then he said, each of these 4 storage bags contains 50 demonic bees at the late stage of the blood refining realm. After you use the techniques I just passed to you, you can use these demonic bees to form the demon soldier formation. With this demon soldier formation, you will at least have the strength of a blood condensation realm cultivator. Could it be that Taoist Shenping already has some understanding of the Fist Valley space? Lu Ping could be considered an iron-faced person in the cultivation world who wouldn't blush when he lied. He chuckled and said, Taoist Gu must be joking. I've never heard of this Fist Valley space before, but I've intentionally collected some books about the Yingtian sect in Hebei. Among them, there were many descriptions of the secret realms left behind by the Yingtian sect. I believe that the layout of the Yingtian sect in the Fist Valley space might be similar, so I gave some instructions to my disciples. Chapter 710. The moment Du Jialua and the rest of the first and second level blood condensation realm disciples stepped out of the 5-colored cloud, they suddenly felt that the cloud they were walking in was slightly thicker than before. They couldn't even take a step out of the 5-colored cloud. At that moment, the 3rd level blood condensation realm wasp that had already crawled into Du Jialua's sleeve suddenly moved. Du Jialua was surprised. Just as he was about to lift up his sleeve to check, a fat person suddenly appeared out of thin air. Du Jialua jumped in fright. He was about to shout when he saw the person in front of him put his index finger in front of his mouth and made a shushing gesture. Only then did Du Jialua realize that the person in front of him was Perfected Debao. Just as Du Jialua was about to ask in a low voice, he saw Perfected Debao's body suddenly emit a khaki-colored smoke. When the smoke dissipated, a fat mouse could be seen. It had shrunk itself into a meatball that was only half a foot long and rolled into Du Jialua's sleeve. Although Du Jialua was puzzled, he immediately pretended as if nothing had happened. He took another step forward and followed the other cultivators out of the range of the 5-elemental cloud robe. However, what shocked Du Jialua was that after Perfected Debao transformed into his original form and entered his sleeve, his newly formed divine sense discovered that Perfected Debao's current cultivation was only at the 3rd level of the blood condensation realm. How was this possible? Although Du Jialua was shocked, he didn't dare to show it on his face. It was easy to completely seal an early-stage core forging cultivator's cultivation, and it wasn't difficult to seal it to the late stage of the blood condensation realm either. However, to seal a cultivator's cultivation from the early-stage core forging realm to the early stage of the blood condensation realm, Du Jialua didn't know how to seal a cultivator's cultivation all the way from the early-stage core forging realm to the early stage of the blood condensation realm. Although Du Jialua had read many books in the cultivation world with Lu Ping's support, he didn't know how to seal a cultivator's cultivation all the way to the early stage of the blood condensation realm. Perhaps only a brilliant person like Elder Xian Ping could have such shocking methods, right? Du Jialua quickly recollected his thoughts. At that moment, the 5 late-stage core forging realm cultivators from the 3 sects were going to work together to open up the Fist Valley. Every 300 years, the collapsed space of the Fist Valley would weaken once. At this time, 6 late-stage core forging realm cultivators would work together to open a space tunnel in 6 different directions. Amidst a series of teeth-aching noises, the originally crisscrossing spatial cracks were temporarily cleared. Lu Ping skillfully controlled the autumn dew sword to stab into the 2 nodes of the formation far away from each other. A steady stream of vigorous Zhen Yuan was injected into the formation, maintaining the entire spatial passage. Perfected Jian Ming turned around and said solemnly, "The tunnel has been opened. Disciples from all sects quickly enter the space of the Fist Valley. 3 months later we will open the tunnel again for 1 day. If you can't come out by then, the space of the tunnel will collapse again. If you want to come out, you will have to wait for 300 years. No one was amused by Perfected Jian Ming's joke. 60 early-stage blood condensation realm cultivators from all sects entered in a single file, passed through the light screen of the tunnel, and disappeared. After all the disciples entered the space, Gu Hun from the Gu family bid farewell to everyone and left first, leaving only Perfected Jian Ming and Master Gu Zhou to guard the space tunnel. The space would open in 3 months, so there was no need for everyone to stay here. After a while, Pang Feiyun also found an excuse to leave. Previously, he tried to use a rare treasure to spy on Lu Ping's instructions to the Celestial Academy disciples, but he was stopped by the spirit-nurturing treasure, the Cloud Radiance 5 Elements robe. Then he suffered a loss from Lu Ping, and his divine sense was almost scattered by Lu Ping. Now he was in a hurry to go back and recover from his injuries. Perfected Lu Xinyuan looked back at Lu Ping and said, "Don't tell me you're going to leave too?" Lu Ping was stunned. He did want to leave just now, but after hearing Perfected Lu Xuanyuan's words, he was too embarrassed to just leave. Perfected Lu Xinyuan chuckled and said, "Senior brother, I'm the Mountain Elder of the Celestial Academy now. I can't say that I have a myriad of affairs to attend to every day, but I'm still quite busy. In that case, I'll have to trouble junior brother Lu and junior brother Xian Fang to look after me again." Lu Ping nodded helplessly, while Perfected Xian Fang was secretly delighted. In fact, this time, Perfected Lu Xinyuan had received Perfected Xian Fang's request, hoping that he could ask Lu Ping for some advice on alchemy. Although Perfected Xian Fang was also an alchemy master, compared to an alchemy grandmaster like Lu Ping, the gap between them could not be calculated. It was extremely rare to receive guidance from an alchemy grandmaster. Perfected Xian Fang was a well-deserved alchemy genius among the 3rd-generation disciples of Zhenling. It was only because of a monstrous genius like Lu Ping that he had been living in a state of desperation to catch up with Lu Ping, only to be left further and further behind. After Lu Ping came out of seclusion, when Perfected Xian Fang saw Lu Ping in front of the main hall of Immortal Academy, he finally understood the purpose of the sect transferring him to the Central Plains. It was to let him face Lu Ping and completely abandon the last trace of his demon. After understanding the cause and effect, Perfected Xian Fang completely let go of his previous obsession and hoped to communicate with Lu Ping. Therefore, he wanted to talk to Lu Ping alone through Perfected Lu Xinyuan in the name of asking for advice on alchemy. Perfected Lu Xinyuan knew about the conflict between Lu Ping and Perfected Xian Fang. Although Perfected Lu Xinyuan found this kind of trivial matter funny, Perfected Xian Fang was after all the alchemy grandmaster of the sect. In terms of status and identity, Perfected Lu Xinyuan was even more happy to see him take the initiative to reconcile with Lu Ping, so he agreed. Therefore, the always honest Perfected Lu Xinyuan actually played a scoundrel with Lu Ping. However, it seemed like the heavens also found Perfected Xian Fang interesting and wanted to play a joke on him. Just when Lu Ping agreed to stay behind with Perfected Lu Xinyuan, Lu Ping looked up at the sky upstream of Ying River in surprise. When Perfected Lu Xinyuan saw Lu Ping like this, he also looked up and saw a ray of light approaching from afar. When it got close, Perfected Lu Xinyuan said in surprise, "It's Perfected Li Nan. How did he get here?" Lu Ping recognized this Perfected Li Nan. He was the guest cultivator at the 6th layer of core forging who did his best to protect a few Immortal Academy disciples from being killed by junior martial brother Wang. This guest cultivator could be considered as one of the first batch of cultivators to join Immortal Academy. In these years he could be considered capable and experienced. In fact, Guotianshan, Laozu and Perfected Lu Xinyuan had long understood Perfected Li Nan's purpose. His cultivation had been stuck at the peak of the 6th layer of core forging for many years. However, due to his status as a rogue cultivator and the flaws in his cultivation method, he was unable to break through to the late stage of core forging. The reason he joined Immortal Academy was to perfect his cultivation heritage and break through to the late stage of core forging. However, at that time, Immortal Academy had just been established and people's hearts were hard to predict. Guotianshan, Laozu, and the others naturally had to be on guard. How could they easily leak their family's heritage? However, in these 10 years, Perfected Li Nan's reputation in Immortal Academy was quite good. Especially after the battle between Perfected Xianping and the Gu clan, Perfected Li Nan finally received the recognition of many cultivators in Immortal Academy. When Perfected Li Nan descended, Perfected Lu Xianyuan asked doubtfully, "Brother Li, how did you get here?" In Immortal Academy, only perfected masters of core forging who came from the North Sea under Tianshan Laozu knew about the Fist Valley's space. The other core forging juniors would not tell Perfected Li Nan about it. Therefore, there was only one possibility for Perfected Li Nan to come here. Perfected Li Nan let out a breath and said, "Tianshan Laozu just sent a message saying that a guest from afar has arrived. He wants the two of you to return to Immortal Academy as soon as possible after the matter in the Fist Valley space is settled." Lu Ping and Perfected Lu Shenyuan looked at each other in surprise. Guest from afar was a term used by Immortal Academy to refer to cultivators from their own sects in the North Sea. Guotianshan Laozu actually asked Perfected Li Nan to send such a message. It could be seen that Perfected Li Nan had passed Guotianshan Laozu's test. Lu Ping and Perfected Lu Shenyuan smiled and cupped their hands at Perfected Li Nan. They said, "Congratulations, Brother Li." Perfected Li Nan was stunned at first, but his face immediately revealed an ecstatic expression. He stammered, "You too this. Perfected Lu Shenyuan patted Perfected Li Nan's shoulder and said, "I'll have to trouble Brother Li and Junior Brother Shenfang to look after this place for the time being. Junior Brother Xianping and I will return to the sect first." Chapter 7:11. Enlightened Master Lu Shenyuan was a little surprised, but Lu Ping looked at the woman in front of him in shock. Enlightened Master Shen Kai looked at Lu Ping's expression and found it funny. She said, "Junior Martial Brother Lu, we haven't met for a few decades. Why are you so distant?" Lu Ping blushed and smiled embarrassedly. "I didn't expect it to be Senior Martial Sister Qi who came from home. I haven't heard much news about Senior Martial Sister Qi in the sect. But after seeing Senior Martial Sister's cultivation, I finally understand." This time, Zhenling sent 5 core forging cultivators to Yingshan Immortal Academy. The one leading them was Enlightened Master Shen Kai, who was in front of Lu Ping. Lu Ping recognized this Enlightened Master Shen Kai and had a deep impression of her. She was Qi Zitsai, one of the 18 generals of the North Sea, before Enlightened Master Lu Shenyuan advanced to core forging. In fact, Lu Ping wasn't completely clueless about Qi Zitsai's situation. She was a famous cultivator in the past, so Lu Ping had naturally asked about her recent situation. Back then he heard that Qi Zitsai had encountered a huge bottleneck in her breakthrough to the core forging realm. Even after Enlightened Master Lu Shenyuan and the others advanced to the core forging realm, she was still stuck at the peak of the blood condensation realm. Later on, he heard that she basically had no hope of advancing to core forging. Lu Ping felt that it was a pity for a period of time. Although Qi Zitsai was a woman, she was very capable and experienced. She left a deep impression on Lu Ping. After Lu Ping spent most of his time traveling, he didn't hear any news about her. Today he saw Qi Zitsai again. Not only had she broken through to the core forging realm, she seemed to be the same as Lu Shenyuan. She was also a cultivator who had accumulated a lot of experience. In less than 100 years, she had risen from the late blood condensation realm to the 6th layer core forging realm. However, Lu Ping could feel from her aura that Enlightened Master Shen Kai's cultivation seemed to have just advanced and stabilized after a period of seclusion. Speaking of Zhenling sect's 3rd-generation disciples, they could be roughly divided into 3 different age groups. The first stage consisted of Taoist Master Shen Tian, Taoist Master Shen Hui, Taoist Master Shen Ru, Taoist Master Shen Hui, and other disciples of the 2nd generation of Zhenling. These disciples had already reached the 5th or 6th layer of core forging. As for the more outstanding disciples like Shen-Tian Jinren, they had already stepped into the late core forging stage and had begun to peak at the transcendence stage, preparing to advance to the transcendence stage. The second group consisted of disciples like Lu Shenyuan, Qi Shen Kai, Taoist Master Shen Shang, and Taoist Master Shen Lei. They had joined the second generation of Jinling's disciples relatively late and had only cultivated for a short period of time. However, the more accomplished disciples had already advanced to the mid-core forging stage. The more outstanding disciples like Lu Xianyuan, Qi Xiankai, and Taoist Master Xian Shang had already advanced to the sixth layer of core forging and were beginning to work towards the late core forging stage. The third group was the disciples represented by Lu Ping, Ji Xianxian, Yao Xianyong, Du Xianfeng, Chen Xuanlian, and the others. In this group of disciples, those who were successful had also advanced to the core forging realm, and the more outstanding ones were also in the mid-core forging realm. Of course, there was also an outlier like Lu Ping in this group of disciples. However, when the third generation of Jinling's disciples discussed each other's cultivation realms, they often automatically ignored this person. This was not a person who could be judged by common sense but rather a monster. There were also two late core forging stage cultivators who came with Taoist Master Xian Kai, and they were both acquaintances of Lu Ping. One was Liang Tianfeng Laozu's disciple, Taoist Master Zhang Xianbei, who had just advanced to the transcendent stage. The other was Taoist Master Xianyu, who was rather taciturn back in the East Sea. These two Taoists were above Taoist Master Xian Kai in terms of cultivation and experience. However, this time, Jinling had actually sent Taoist Master Xian Kai to replace Taoist Master Lu Xianyuan as the Mountain Elder. Thus, Taoist Master Xian Kai became the leader of the group of five. The arrival of Taoist Master Xianbei and Taoist Master Xianyu was to increase the number of late core forging stage cultivators in Immortal Academy. This was also what Guotianshan Laozu had strongly requested of the sect after the battle between Lu Ping and the three heroes of the Gu clan. At the same time, there were also two mid-core forging stage cultivators. One was also an acquaintance of Lu Ping. It was Chen Lian's junior, Taoist Master Xian Tao. Lu Ping had a good impression of him. Back then, when Taoist Master Lu Hai led the demon clan to besiege Huangli Island, this Taoist Master Xian Tao happened to be present. At that time he also played a great role in the battle. Later, when Yin Xuanchu's identity as a mixed human and demon was exposed, he also helped Yin Xianchu escape with Lu Ping and the others without hesitation. Of course, the reason why Taoist Master Xian Tao could come to Immortal Academy was also the result of Tianshan Laozu's strong request. The reason was very simple. Currently, Immortal Academy did not have a decent tool refiner, and this Taoist Master Xian Tao was one of the only two tool refiners in Jinling's third-generation disciples, second only to Chen Lian. The remaining Taoist Master Xian Teng was someone Lu Ping did not know. After meeting her, Lu Ping found out that this Taoist Master Xian Teng was actually a talisman master of the Talisman Pavilion. However, she was not under Taoist Master Xianju, but the disciple of another talisman master. With the addition of these five people, Yingshan Immortal Academy's strength would undoubtedly rise to a higher level. Not to mention the addition of a tool refiner and a talisman master, the addition of Taoist Master Xianbei and Taoist Master Xianyu, these two late-stage core forging cultivators would also greatly increase the strength of the Immortal Academy's core forging cultivators. At the very least, after the incident with the Gu clan's three heroes, the experts of Immortal Academy would not be stretched too thin. It must be known that when Taoist Master Xianbei advanced to the late stage of core forging, he used a high-grade earth-rank spirit object, and Taoist Master Xianyu also smelted a mid-grade earth-rank dual-attribute spirit object. Although the quality of the smelted spirit object was only one aspect of a cultivator's strength, at the very least, Taoist Master Xianbei and Taoist Master Xianyu were not weaklings among cultivators of the same level. After the five people came to Immortal Academy, they quickly joined and established their reputation among the many disciples, establishing their own positions, especially Taoist Master Xian Kai. Because she wanted to take over Taoist Master Lu Xuanyuan's position as Mountain Elder, she had to follow Taoist Master Lu Xianyuan and familiarize herself with everything in Immortal Academy. After a year, Taoist Master Lu Xianyuan would return to the North Sea and prepare to advance to the late stage of core forging. After the five newcomers were led by Taoist Master Lu Xianyuan to familiarize themselves with the situation in Immortal Academy, Lu Ping turned to Guotianshan Laozu and said with a smile, "Martial uncle, it seems that the momentum of the sect's development these years is still good. Otherwise, according to the information that senior brother Shantian brought back about the North Sea's cultivation world, although our sect still has the advantage in the North Sea, it would not be easy to easily transfer two late-stage core forging cultivators, a master refiner and a talisman master." Guotianshan Laozu smiled and said, "The harvest from Yingtian Dojo has deepened the foundation of the sects in the North Sea. Although the sects in the North Sea have developed with the treasures obtained from Ming Tian Dojo, our sect has gained the most, so our development is naturally faster. However, the most important reason why the sect is so generous this time is because of the East Sea. You see? Lu Ping's eyes lit up and said, "Did something go wrong in the Crystal Palace?" Guotianshan Laozu nodded, but he did not look relaxed. Instead he looked a little solemn. He said, "Senior brother Tiankong sent news from Jingzha Island that the conflict between the Carefree sect and the Crystal Palace is getting more and more intense. As for the other 4 large sects in the East Sea, except for Skyrind who is confronting the Kuinfish clan and has no time to deal with other things, the other 3 sects are more or less secretly helping the Carefree sect." Lu Ping nodded and said in a serious voice, "That's how it should be. After all, the Crystal Palace has been the overlord of the East Sea for too long. Now that someone is taking the lead to fight against the Crystal Palace, it's natural for the other 3 sects to secretly help the Carefree sect." Guotianshan agreed with Lu Ping's words and continued, "If it was only this matter, it would not have caused the Crystal Palace to be so badly battered. More importantly, the Crystal Palace's operation to invade the Middle Earth this time has failed again. The Heavenly Moon sect, together with a few sects in the east coast of the Middle Earth, suddenly attacked and destroyed the few strongholds that the Crystal Palace had established along the coast in one fell swoop. This drove the Crystal Palace's power from the land back to the sea. Now the Crystal Palace's power has mostly shrunk to a few islands along the coast and barely managed to gain a foothold." Tianshan Laozu paused for a while and continued, "According to the news from Martial Uncle Tiankong, the Avalon of 5 Elements, one of the 5 holy lands of the Middle Earth, seems to be behind this sudden attack by the Heavenly Moon sect." Although Lu Ping was quite shocked when he heard this news, he felt that it was inevitable. If it was just the Heavenly Moon sect alone, even though it was also a large sect, how could it resist the Crystal Palace for so many years, causing the Crystal Palace to be unable to gain a foothold in the Middle Earth? However, now that he heard that the game between the Avalon of 5 Elements and the Crystal Palace was actually turning from the dark to the light, if this news were to spread, the entire cultivation world would probably immediately welcome a shock. There was a faint anticipation in Lu Ping's heart. If these 2 large sects were to clash head-on, what kind of shocking scene would that be? Seeing that Lu Ping's expression had suddenly become excited, Guotianshan Laozu naturally knew what Lu Ping was planning. Thus, he rudely interrupted Lu Ping's thoughts and said, "In a few days your martial uncle Tianfeng and martial uncle Tianqing will also arrive at the Celestial Academy. At that time, there will be a chaotic battle in Hebei. You are the #1 expert below the Dharma adepts of the Celestial Academy. At that time, there will definitely be many matters that require you to represent the Celestial Academy. After the Fist Valley space ends, you will first represent the Celestial Academy to the Spiritual Martial Sect to participate in the gathering of the Hebei cultivation world to encircle and annihilate Mara. Martial Uncle Tianfeng and Martial Uncle Tianqing are also coming?" Lu Ping's expression turned cold. His intuition told him that this matter was not as simple as it seemed. Thus he said, "Are the 2 martial uncles here in secret?" Guotianshan Laozu looked deeply at Lu Ping and said, "The news that the 2 of them have broken through to the Dharma stage has not yet been leaked." Guotianshan Laozu thought for a while and seemed to want to explain the matter more thoroughly. Thus he continued, "After the destruction of the Ying Tian sect, the Spiritual Martial Sect is the most powerful sect in Hebei. This sect already has the strength of a large sect. All they need is the recognition of the 5 great holy lands to officially enter the threshold of a large sect." Lu Ping took a deep breath and said, "I know what to do." You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.